I will tell you the tale of Tinuviel, said Strider, in brief, for it is a long tale of which the end is not known. And there are none now except Elrond that remember it aright as it was told of old. He was silent for some time, and then he began not to speak, but to chant softly. The leaves were long, the grass was green, the hemlock umbels tall and fair, and in the glade a light was seen of stars in shadow shimmering. Tinuviel was dancing there to music of a pipe unseen. The light of stars was in her hair and in her raiment glimmering. There Beren came from mountains cold, and lost he wandered under leaves, and where the elven river rolled he walked alone and sorrowing. He peered between the hemlock leaves, and saw in wonder flowers of gold upon her mantle and her sleeves, and her hair like shadow following. Enchantment healed his weary feet that over hills were doomed to roam, and forth he hastened, strong and fleet, and grasped at moonbeams glistening. Through woven woods and elven homes she lightly fled on dancing feet, and left him lonely still to roam the silent forest listening. He heard thereof the flying sound of feet as light as linden leaves, or music welling underground in hidden hollows quavering. Now withered lay the hemlock sheaves, and one by one with sighing sound whispering fell the beechen leaves in the wintry woodland wavering. He sought her ever wandering far, where leaves of years were thickly strewn, by light of moon and ray of star in frosty heavens shivering. Her mantle glinted in the moon as on a hilltop high and far she danced, and at her feet was strewn a mist of silver quivering. And winter past she came again, and her song released the sudden spring, like rising lark and falling rain and melting water bubbling. He saw the elven flowers spring about her feet and heal again. He longed by her to dance and sing of the grass unthrottling. Again she fled, but swift he came. Tinuviel, Tinuviel, he called her by her elvish name, and there she halted, listening. One moment stood she, and a spell his voice laid on her. Beren came, and doom fell on Tinuviel, that in his arms lay glistening. As Beren looked into her eyes within the shadow of her hair, the trembling starlight of the skies he saw there mirrored shimmering. Tinuviel the elven fair, immortal maiden elven wise, about him cast her shadowy hair, and arms like silver glimmering. Long was the way that fate them bore o'er stony mountains golden grey, through halls of iron and darkling door, and woods of nightshade morrowless. The sundering seas between them lay, and yet at last they met once more. And long ago they passed away in the forest singing sorrowless.
Oh, you guys, welcome. I hope you like that video. I have no idea what happened to the format of that. Usually when it plays, it's like the whole screen, and I don't know, but welcome back to Silmarillion Book Club. We are on part 4, and we are going to be covering Beren and Lúthien, and the next 2 chapters after that. So I'd like to welcome some of my guests. And I think actually everyone is here, but like there's just some like layout issues. Oh, okay.
There we are.
Hi, guys. I have no idea what happened to my intro, but like, thank you all for coming. And like, yeah, like I know this one was a little bit longer than the other intros I've done, but when I found like Tolkien reading it, it's like anything that the master reads, it's like has precedence. And if you guys are wondering, if you're out there listening, and thank you guys if you're rewatching this, if you're watching this live, thank you. And this was the part from Lord of the Rings when Aragorn is telling the Hobbit about the story of Beren and Lúthien. So it's a pretty
Just start off with how beautiful is that prose?
Yeah.
Oh.
The poetry, guys.
It just, you couple that with the knowledge that this isn't really Tolkien writing in the story. This is Tolkien describing his wife.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's purely like real life inspired, like actual love inspired, including how he wrote Beren and Lúthien meeting is accurate to how to his own life experience. Apparently, if I recall the story correctly, he and his wife Edith, they went to a field of hemlock, and where she would dance and sing for him.
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's cool.
And that's where he got the inspiration to have Lúthien dancing in a field of flowers and trees and all that.
Nice.
That's really, really cool. I know I was kind of making fun of it, and I was talking to Alex, like, who was watching me make this, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna laugh because I think last time we were down by the river, I was like, you know, like checking out the trees and like, yeah. So I just want to say hi to our chat. We obviously have Will watching us. My love, I love you. I hope you're enjoying the rest of your football game. And Will. John Thomas, yay! Hey. And Jacob, thank you so much for watching, Jacob? You guys.
Hey, Jacob.
Yeah. So you guys, these chapters, there's a range of emotions in these.
Yeah.
Chapters.
Oh yeah.
Just a smidge.
Just a little bit, yeah.
A very deep analysis and connection with the human soul that I have to deviate slightly because I have to talk about this.
Hi, Trip.
There was someone who the other day said the Silmarillion was a dull book in terms of, you know, the prose and the density of the information just compact in there and blah. And I just had to stand and sit and stare that person in the face and be like, have you actually read the book?
Right.
Because anybody who's read this chunk in particular,
yeah,
like Beren and Lúthien and Túrambar, anybody who has read those chapters cannot, with a straight face, say the Silmarillion is dull text.
No, right. It's not. I mean, I can understand it's dense and stuff. Like, I'm going to actually say, like, I did just read these like the last 2 weeks, and I kind of had to stop for last month because I was doing my master gardening program, and I am now officially like an intern. So I'm very excited about that, and I passed my test and everything. But it's really hard to go from something that's super, super dense to like hardcore science, botany and stuff back to this. And I'm like, I don't remember this. And I'm an English major. Like, I'm used to just reading a lot. And I think it's dense is totally true, but I think if you have studied sort of like early English or like classics or other things like this, it is a very there's a lot of verisimilitude there. Mm-hmm. And I think that is one of the beautiful things about Tolkien, and it is really hard to keep up. So I'm gonna say, you guys, if I mess up anything in this part and not remember everything, like, you might have to help me along. So.
Yeah.
This is exactly why we have Feanor and Gadfly on this thing, because you
have, we got a fellowship.
I'm sitting here reading all this stuff, and it's difficult for me to read just because with health issues for the past 6 months has made things very, very difficult.
Yes,
so I have the audiobook going with it on here, which is a phenomenal read and listen. And I'm sitting there reading with it, and I started, especially Túrambar. I started going through that, and I'm like, I'm usually like 15-20 minutes pause, and I'm like, no, we're going.
Right.
Hit send. Let's go. So, okay, shall we start with the good stuff of Beren and Lúthien? So, this is just a very long story in the Silmarillion, but it's actually like its own standalone novel. Am I correct with that?
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, is it like an expanded version of the story that's in the Silmarillion, or something else?
Yeah, it's this chunk is essentially the Cliff Notes version of that text, but it's once again it's Christopher Tolkien compiling his dad's notes into a narrative, and so with a lot of these chunks in the Silmarillion, he had more notes from that J.R.R. Tolkien had composed that would be able to fit into the volume. And so that's why you have like the books of the Forgotten Tales and stuff like that. It's just all these extra bits of Tolkien's notes. And
okay.
And so after Christopher finished the Silmarillion, he felt that it didn't actually do justice to his father's works, and so that's why he started doing all the putting all the other manuscripts together and releasing them at first in note format, and then starting to create the narratives. And I think there's 5 now full texts, but not all of them are done by Christopher because sadly he passed away. And is that right, Feanor?
Yeah, I'm just counting them all up in my head. There's
Beren and Lúthien,
Beren, Children of Beren, Fall of Numenor,
and isn't there a 5th one?
I feel like there is. I feel like I'm spacing it out.
Is Unfinished Tales in that listing, or
no? It's not Tales from the Perilous Realm either. It might only be the 4. Because
I found some of those books. Like
it has to be those 4.
Because I'm pretty certain there were 3 that were written by Christopher, and then 2 that were written by somebody else.
I thought it was just the one that was the Fall of Numenor was the last one that came out. That one wasn't written by Christopher, or it probably in part was, but it wasn't finished by him.
Maybe I'm meshing the new set of notes and letters that's being released by the publishers, in which they talk about how they have edited the notes. I'm like, don't edit Tolkien's notes, you.
Just leave the notes. Like I remember seeing, like there was a book that came out like last year. Like that was the notes. Yeah. Like, and I was just
they're taking Tolkien's notes and his letters and editing them and putting them together in a format. So that to me is a very iffy proposition.
It has me very concerned, to say the least. Yeah, especially given what they've been doing to classic novels recently.
Yeah, well, and how tight the publishing company is with Amazon.
Yep, exactly. That's well, like I said, I got to wait until like the 14th or the 15th to pick it up because demand's so high for it. The letters, but when I pick it up, I am going to be doing a review of it and seeing if there's any gratuitous, edits that were made.
Yeah. So just before, I had a question for you guys, but I wanted to say hi to your Barmy. Thanks for stopping by. So my question for you guys was, like, how does the novelization of Beren and Lúthien differ from the story that's in there? Is it just like, is it the basic story, or is there more than what's there?
Well, because it's been a while since I've read the actual novelization, but if I recall correctly, it was it's the main story plot that you get in the Silmarillion with a whole bunch of like subtext added in by Christopher. So there's like a whole lot of different notes and explanations, different ways that the story was going to be written, what J.R.R. Tolkien was trying to do in certain areas. I have it right here. It's like 3 feet away from me, but it's pretty much just expanded upon edits and explanations about different things. So it's very different from Children of Beren, which is like an actual like complete novel story. Like it's an actual like, whereas there's just like a lot of footnotes in Beren and Lúthien, the book.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, see, I have it. I haven't read that yet. I've got that. I've got Fall of Numenor, Unfinished Tales. I haven't read any of those yet, and I've got them on my agenda.
There's just so much to read. I know. I'm so excited because, like, before I left, that was actually when I was visiting California. Is that I found like the illustrated version of the Rankin and Bass, The Hobbit, which absolutely frightened me as a child. But I'm gonna read it. It looks really cool, and I'm gonna keep bringing it out on Wednesday nights to torment Flasty Phoenix. So because we know how much she loves it. But yeah. So let's dive right in. So going a bit to the start of the story, it follows Beren, and remembered correctly, Beren is the son of Beren here, who was one of the original humans that befriended the elves, and this was after they fought. I think was it the fourth battle, you guys? The big. I don't remember.
The fifth battle's in numbered tiers, so yeah, it'd have to be the fourth battle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the fourth battle, and this was the big battle where like Melkor was just really going at it. He destroyed a whole bunch of people, and what happened to this group of humans is that they were chased out of their house and their castle and stuff, and they were basically down to 12. And Beren was one of them, and the story kind of starts off with talking about Beren, and then it talks about Gorlam, which is one of the men. And I thought this was an interesting little side note because it reminded me of something in Wheel of Time. So Gorlam is one of the guys that was with this group, and he was out looking for his wife, and he went back to where they lived, and he thought he saw her in the window of their home, and he tries to find her, and he finds that she's not there, and he's actually captured by Sauron, and then Sauron takes him prisoner and takes him back to, I think, Angband or wherever he was, and he starts saying, hey, you know what? I know where your wife is. If you tell me where these other humans are, like, I'll let you be with her. And then it turns out, like, Gorlam says, yes, I'll tell you. And then he tells him, and then, well, like, trick's on you, dude. She's actually dead. Yeah. So then he ends up killing Gorlam and stuff. And I just thought that part was interesting because it reminds me how, because I've been doing The Great Hunt, listening to it with Will, and there's that part with Lanfear, and she sort of appears in the window, like looking at the guys, and she's kind of stalking them and stuff like that. And yeah, so that was cool. But also, that's like a nice happy way to start this story.
Well, it's also the with Dune, right? The doctor who betrays the Atreides.
Oh, okay.
Right, he's like. He betrays them because he wants his wife back. He wants to be reunited with his wife, and the Baron is like, okay, all right, you've betrayed them, so now I'm gonna send you to your wife, whom I killed. But
yeah, that was
it's that that. Let me catch my thoughts. It's impossible to look at these types of characters who do that type of betrayal and that type of treachery as anything but inherently evil.
Yep.
And so when you have people who make the arguments that, oh, Sauron wasn't entirely bad and he could have been good, you're just like,
I was just about to bring that up. It was on the tip of my tongue. Like, oh man, I really, like, come on now. Like, I bring it up all the time, like, to a certain fan base that shall not be named, when they're always telling, well, Sauron is just really complicated. I could fix him. It's like, y'all remember what he did to Gorlam, right? Like, come on now. Like,
I mean, I think this is like,
he's evil.
I love this story because we actually get to see a lot of Sauron and like what he is and what he's capable of. And I mean, we've gotten hints of like his sorcery capabilities and how he is very like manipulative with his like mental and like torture and stuff like that.
Within this chapter, we learn that he's the lords of the werewolves and the lords of the vampires and stuff. And what are those two monstrous creatures known for being? Duplicitous and violent.
Yeah, you really get a sense that Sauron is definitely the best way to describe him as a sadist. He really is. He takes pleasure in hurting people.
Yeah,
which is one of the reasons why some people argue that he is a more evil entity than Morgoth. Morgoth wants to destroy everything out of his hatred of Eru and his jealousy or enviousness of Eru's ability to create ex nihilo. Yeah. Whereas Sauron delights in the controlling and the manipulation and the delivering of the pain and the sorrow to other beings.
Yeah, that is like, and he like to like pervert the natural order, because they talk about the things that he creates, all the fell beasts and stuff like that. And then of course we get the first mention of vampires and werewolves, and I'm just like, what?
So then really from that point of view, then we could sit there and look at the rings, and the rings would be a sole idea out of the mind of Sauron, never would have entered into the mind of Morgoth.
No.
Yeah, I don't think he could do that.
Well, actually, the idea, I've heard this theory before. It might be supported in text. I'd have to double check. But the theory is that Sauron actually kind of got the idea for the rings from Morgoth, because the whole reason why Morgoth, his power was depleted, was because he put all of his essence into Arda itself. And so that was kind of the backdrop of where Sauron got the idea for the rings, was, okay, I'm just going to put my essence into this little trinket here.
But the difference being Morgoth couldn't stand to give other entities his own power.
Exactly.
Whereas that's pretty much what the rings are. Sauron bestowing some of his power onto other people.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. I agree. And I am absolutely with you, Trip, on that. Like, evil is evil and good is good. I don't need this sort of gray world. Like, it just doesn't do that. But but it's postmodernism. So
the gray world works when you have the full spectrum. When you have, of course, absolute evil and absolute good on either side, and you understand that within those boundaries people operate, right? But they try to do that, or they're drawn to doing that. But it doesn't work as it's because when you have that world of gray, actually all you really have is a world of brown, because everything's shit.
Yeah, and you could definitely say there's morally gray characters within the Silmarillion. But in Tolkien's world, I'd argue Boromir is a morally gray character. Feanor,
Feanor,
Túrambar, very morally
Turin,
gray.
Yeah.
And speaking of good and evil, Will, I'm going to disagree with you. Like, Sauron did not write Underworld, because that movie was actually good. I'm going to say he wrote Twilight.
What the hell are we doing?
What is happening?
Vampires and werewolves. Like, okay, let's keep on track.
Let's do it.
Sparkles.
When we get to the werewolves, there's a correlation I want to bring up. But let's keep going.
We might want to keep going.
Okay, so the end result of this Gorlam episode is that they send orcs after the band of people, and the only person that survives this orc attack is Beren, because Beren was out scouting. He comes back and he finds out what happens, and he is just on a revenge arc now, and he just wants to kill everything. And he buries his father, kills the orcs, and he lives for 4 years in the woods and kind of gains a reputation as this kind of wild man that's just really out to just kill everything, and he's sort of the hero.
Importantly, he befriends the animals, right?
Oh,
which is another one of those Tolkien drawing heavily on his mythological roots and understandings. You know, like Balder, I think it is, in Norse mythology. Yeah. Every plant and animal swears that they won't harm him except for the nettle or thistle or something. And so he ends up getting killed by a dart of thistle. But it's a very similar thing where you have this mighty warrior who the natural world loves and cherishes. And so Beren is an example of that, and it plays out in the story. I mean,
and that's really important too, because there hasn't really been a human character that's had that sort of close relationship with the natural world too. All right, so and so one of the things that happens out of this, there weren't werewolves yet, but Sauron creates werewolves, and they were defined as beasts with evil spirits in their body, and it's especially to go after Beren. So think about what a Chad he is to actually have an old race of fell beasts to go after him. So he flees his homeland of Doriath, and then he starts going out to the Girdle of Melian. And remember, this was a place where, you know, if they didn't want you in there, you couldn't get in there. And I think the reason he was able to go in there because it was sort of like a prophecy thing. And so he kind of gets in there, and while he's in there, he meets a certain young elf maiden.
I believe the phrase that it's used is he was, what was it, driven by fate, I think is the way Tolkien described it, was
that's a conversation we have to have when we get to Túrambar, the difference that Tolkien uses between fate and doom.
Yes, I think that's really important
in that conversation later.
Yeah. He passed through the mazes that Melian wove about the kingdom of Thingol, even as she had foretold, for a great doom lay on him. Yeah.
Oh, yes, a doom lay on him. That is really interesting, because I think in the first one that we did, we were talking about, okay, did Tolkien believe of like in predestination and stuff like that? So we'll definitely save that for when we get to Túrambar. So, so they meet in the like woods of Neldaroth, and he calls her Tinuviel. And I think it's really funny because in the opening thing that I had, he's talking about, he calls her by her elvish name. But I'm like, it's just a name that he made up for her because he didn't know her name, and I thought that was really cool. But I thought it's just so pretty how they talk about meeting, and like I was gonna
be espying the beautiful vision from a distance, right? And once again, this is another example of Tolkien being so heavily steeped in classical literature, like the espying the woman in the grove, like unto a vision sent by God, is a trope in medieval literature, right? And so of course Tolkien is going to put that in there, especially when it comes to the story of him and his wife.
Yeah. There's a lot of you also notice a lot of, because in Tolkien you start to notice these like patterns in terms of like aesthetics. For instance, if you look at Thingol and Melian, how they met.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's very
similar to Beren Lúthien.
Well, it's
and they stared at each other for like 100 years.
Of the same story, right? Because Melian is the Maiar, which is the first type of entity created by Eru Ilúvatar, and then Thingol is the elf, which is sort of that
the secondary
race
one
down, right?
Yeah.
And then you have Lúthien, who's the elf, and Beren, who is the man. So once again, you have that sort of downward step,
right,
so to speak, in the man espying the woman on the pedestal, but it's not the pedestal out of reach, and not the pedestal that a person sets up as a trophy. It's the pedestal of that essentially what you would consider the divine focus, right? The person that you look at, and it's not the person you worship, but it's a person that you strive to be worthy of.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. I can't think of, God, I'm trying to remember the myth about like the guy that fell in love with the statue. It's not that situation at all.
Yeah.
It's aspirational.
That was
Galatea, was it?
No, that was not. Well, there are two Galateas, but yeah, one of them was Galatea, the statue by
wasn't it Pyramus?
No, not that's Pyramus and Thisbe.
Thisbe, yeah, I know. I had a cat. My cat name was named Thisbe. So,
but it's the guy who created the statue is also the guy who created the labyrinths, and the father of Icarus, Daedalus.
Oh, okay.
Daedalus created that statue, and somebody fell in love with the statue because she was so beautiful, and Aphrodite made the statue come alive, and
it's all downhill after that.
Right.
So you guys, I was talking to this with Will, and we were having this conversation because in the when I was editing, I was hearing, oh my gosh, he held Lúthien in his arms and she was glistening, and I'm like, that's pretty raunchy for Tolkien. And then I just found the part in the Silmarillion where he talks about how they were together, and I'm gonna read it. And then the spell of silence fell from Beren, and he called to her, crying, Tinuviel, and the woods echoed her name. Then she halted in wonder and fled no more, and Beren came to her. But as she looked on him, doom fell upon her, and she loved him. Yet she slipped from his arms and vanished from his sight, even as day was breaking. Then Beren lay upon the ground in a swoon, and was slain at once by bliss and grief, and he fell into a sleep, as it were, into an abyss of shadow, and waking he was cold as stone, and his heart barren and forsaken. So we were trying to decide, like, was there contact there? Were they fooling around in the grass? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I'm going the wholesome route on this. Absolutely not. It was
pure courtly love.
Courtly love, yes.
Yeah, I know when I was reading that, I was thinking of like they talk about like her hair like being of night, and then of course later on when she escapes, but we'll get there. I just thought that was something really funny, but I did like that because it talked about how her doom fell upon her. Like it's just like you're fated. Yeah, doom versus fate.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, definitely. And then so he sees her and he kind of follows her around for a while, and eventually they meet in the woods and they spend some time together, and they really, really like each other. And while they're I might as well like point out that her name in Elvish, Tinuviel, means nightingale, which is very cool. And they spend
because
the summer
of her beautiful singing.
Mm-hmm. That is really cool. And I'm just gonna go back to the whole thing that we talked about in the beginning, and that's really cool how songs were like associated with the creation of the world. So I feel like there's some kind of like this is kind of like an angelic voice here. And so I thought that was really cool. And like so their time together, however, is like interrupted because Darren the Minstrel, who is an elf, like spies them, and he was kind of jealous because he liked her, of course, and I think he was the one that told Thingol about their relationship. And that did not end well, and Thingol, of course, is very angry. He does not like humans, and he calls Beren to what's a place that they lived in?
Menegoroth,
yes. I trip over that all the time. And so they go there, and then he shows Thingol his ring, and that's the ring of Felagund. He says, like, I'm an elf friend and stuff like that. And he is very unhappy, and he is just like, you cannot have my daughter, like you're just some human, blah blah blah. And right. And then he's like, okay, if you want to be with her, then you know what you need to do? You need to go get me a Silmaril. And I think this is really important to remember for later on, is that he demands Beren retrieve the Silmaril, and he says, bring it to me in your hand. Now, this becomes very like important later on because of things that happen. And so that's interesting. A nice little bit of foreshadowing for later on. And
it's the establishing of the impossible quest.
Yes, definitely.
Right? This is the slaying of the Minotaur and escaping the labyrinth, where Theseus would not have been able to do that if he had not had the help of the princess.
Yes, definitely. And then, what was interesting with that too is this kind of reminded me, because I had questions about like Galadriel and stuff when I was reading Lord of the Rings, like what are her powers, and do we ever get an expansion on this? And this kind of gives us a taste of that because Beren, obviously he's nervous, so Lúthien kind of like is in his head, kind of like coaching him along as he goes. So yeah.
And there's also we'll get to it. There's another a power, if you want, magic, whatever you want to call it, that both Lúthien and Galadriel use at different points in time in Middle Earth. But we'll get to that. It's coming up.
Yeah. So he, Let's see. And this is interesting because it's mentioned several times that like basically anyone who goes after the Silmarils is kind of drawn into the curse of the Noldor and Feanor and stuff.
The doom of Feanor, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, man, dude.
My bad.
Whoops.
Yeah. So he's, you know, it is kind of interesting how the Silmarils work. I thought it had a little bit of a parallel to like the Ring too. It really just kind of corrupts people. And that's going to be sort of like the doom of Menegroth too. And yeah, so they decide, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to find this Silmaril because like, screw it, I'm going to do it. And so he goes out and he goes through Nargothrond, and you know the elves out there are like super crazy and they're trying to, you know, look for him and stuff. And then of course he brings out his ring. It says, I'm a friend of Finrod Felagund, and that's very cool. And it's during that time that they warn him, hey, you guys, or they take him to Finrod and say, hey, look, Feanor's sons are still out there, and they're gonna have problems with your quest because, you know, Silmarils like belong to like one group of people, and you know, FAFO with that. And so when he's there, they get Curfin and what is his name? Celegorm. Like they get very angry.
The crappiest of Feanor's sons.
Yeah, I agree. I really do not like those guys. They're like, they have no chill and they're very annoying, and they don't treat dogs well either, but we haven't gotten there yet. So yeah, they warn him of the rat, or Finrod like warns him of the wrath of Sons, and then they come and they're just, you know, it's interesting. I thought in this part again, how the Silmarils, like everyone was okay. They've been living for since the last war. They've been living in peace, and it's been relatively calm. And then, you know, talk of the Silmarils comes again, and then there's trouble and strife. So yeah, that's just the Silmarils for you. And then because because Beren had the ring, Finrod is like, you know what, I'm going to, you know, I have an oath to you. I'm honor bound to you. So he kind of like sets aside
his competing oaths, right?
Yes.
He's fallen under the oath of Feanor, but he has this other oath that he now has to fulfill, and the two of them are in direct opposition to each other. And so this is one of those instances where you really see a display of the character of the individual and the free choice that they have to make.
Yeah, that was really interesting because I think like he kind of said that, like he said, this is my choice to do this to honor the oath. And that's kind of interesting to compare to like the doom of Feanor and all of that stuff with the Silmarils. And yeah, that is interesting. So okay. And you know what was interesting is that Finrod also knows that if he leaves with Beren, it's going to lead to his death, as foretold by his sister Galadriel. So he makes that choice even knowing he's gonna die. Yeah, that's heavy.
Well, that embodies the sacrifice that a man is willing to make for the woman that he is destined to be with, the one that he values above anything else. I mean, to him, the Silmaril is nothing in comparison to Lúthien, and that's why the quest has the value that it does for him.
Well, that's a thematic nature of the Silmarils, where it's the thing that causes a person to realize the worthlessness of the Silmarils is their valuing of the preciousness of another being. And so although the Silmarils are fantastically crafted and they have the light of the trees in them and all that sort of crazy cool stuff going on, it is a purely prideful love that the person has for the Silmarils. And this is where Tolkien gets into the, you know, like the concept of sin in the Christian thing is based off of the, the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life.
And covetousness too, probably.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes,
that would
definitely.
kind of fall under the pride of life and lust of the flesh, right?
Right.
Or the lust of the eyes, rather. But the thing that surpasses all of those things is the Christly love, the agape love, the true love of something, seeing it as another being, as more than yourself. And so that's the thing that overcomes the desire and the doom of the Silmarils to everybody who encounters them. And it's one of the reasons why Morgoth, Melkor cannot resist their temptation.
Absolutely. That is really, really cool. And I think it also like it's like Beren's quest too. It's like you're looking at a human. Like, this isn't a person that's going to be resurrected. He has a short, finite lifespan who's doing an impossible quest that the elves couldn't even do. And I think that was like one of the things that like Griffin and Celogorm got really angry at. They're like, bro, like, don't go there.
Well, they've been around for centuries at this point. Right?
Yeah.
And this jackanape comes up who's been around for 20-something years at this point, is gonna do what the 1,000-year-old Feanor couldn't, or right?
Yeah.
I thought that was really awesome. So he heads out with Finrod, and eventually they get captured. Both of them get captured by Sauron, and it's kind of funny because like Finrod and Sauron have sort of a rap battle with like their kind of spells and stuff.
Yeah,
I wrote that in my notes, and
they
I was
battle.
just like,
They battle with song. Yeah,
rap battle and song, and it's like I just thought if I hadn't found the token thing, I was going to like write out like a rap battle and have like AI read it or something because my voice is awful, but I thought that was really funny, but it also was interesting because again, it points back to the power of song to create and stuff and to ensnare people. Like it's very powerful, like as we saw in the beginning, and it's interesting because it's sort of like Sauron was Maiar, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like you can see the power of a Maiar versus one of the first elves, and like they have the same kind of like magical powers. Because I remember like noting this because I had a question. I'm like, how does the magic work? There isn't a lot of explanation, but here you can kind of see it more. So that was interesting. And yeah, the end result is that they lose. Their companions get killed, and they're captured, and they're held in the dungeon. And meanwhile, like Lúthien is like, hey, I don't think I should just let Beren just go off and get himself killed. But her dad is like, no, honey, you're gonna stay home. And so they have he gets a prison constructed for her, and it's in a giant tree, and she's like captured in there. It's sort of like Rapunzel, and she does stuff to make her hair grow, and she uses it to create a rope and to create like a magical cape. And this is where like she's very associated with the night. And if you guys remember, if you could see it, if it wasn't completely cut off in the intro, I had a picture of a really cool colorized picture of Edith Tolkien, and she was obviously had beautiful gray eyes, like dark hair, and that's how Lúthien was described. And yeah, I just thought that was really cool.
One thing to note about, so Sauron captures Finrod and Beren, and the way he kills people is he feeds them to werewolves. Yeah. And it's one of the things I brought up earlier was patterns of behavior. And if you read more into Sauron, when he eventually gets to Mordor, he takes his captives and sends them to Shelob's lair. And and has his servants report on how she would play with her food. And it's like he was already exhibiting this kind of behavior in the first age, so it's like just patterns of behavior.
Sketchy.
he's feeding his captives to like nasty creatures. Yeah, werewolves and spiders.
And it's like there's like serial killer shows on like Discovery Channel.
Yep.
They didn't suspect, but there were signs.
Well, and he probably had interactions with he probably had some kind of knowledge of Shelob dating back to that point as well, because the play.
Angolia.
Well. The thing is the area that Beren traversed through to get to Doriath, to get to Lúthien.
Yeah, that was where all those things were.
Yeah, that's where all the nastiness was, and part of that nastiness was the sorcery of Sauron and the magic of Melian becoming meshed with each other.
Oh yeah.
So there's like a whole like elaborate connecting the dots almost of like the first age Sauron and the third age Sauron kind of coming together in this one story.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, let's go on. I just wanted to throw that in there too, because I thought it was just a neat little correlation between how we see him behave in the first and the third age, and second age too, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So, so she's created this like rope, and she climbs down her hair, and she has this magic cape, and it's kind of like a
It also puts people to sleep.
The cape. I was just looking for the word. Like
Yep.
It was like a Harry Potter cloak thing. I can't remember. Cloak of invisibility, but it also like puts people to sleep. So she escapes with that, and when she's out there, I'm trying to read my notes. I'm sorry. She leaves to help Beren and Finrod. She already got out, and while she's making her way to try to find Beren, she's captured by Curufin and Celegorm. And they have this great idea, like, hey, you know what? We're going to just keep you and make you marry Celegorm. So we'll have this super elf empire and everything. And when they find her, like, they're also have Celegorm's wolfhound named Huan. And Huan is a very special creature. He was he's from Oromi, I think, the hunter.
Yeah, Oromi is.
So he was straight out of Valinor, guys. Like, very like.
Just an interjection though, because this is one of those things that comes up repeatedly. That is another one of those interesting facets of the story is these ideas of people taking somebody for wife, right? You have I'm blanking on her name, the sister of
Redhill.
Yeah, she goes by Eowyn to be wife. And then in other
Maeglin's
chapters
mother.
we've got there's in the Túrambar chapter, there's his aunt is taken to wife by one of the Easterlings, right?
Yeah, it's kind of,
and
it kind of reminded. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's essentially the situation that's going on here, where it's like there's a little bit of coercion and force going on here in these people's minds, which is always connected to a terrible character, right? Because that blacksmith was a horrible dude. The Easterlings, not great dudes, and Celegorm and Curufin are clearly, throughout this story, demonstrated to be vile entities in how they operate. You know, they're selfish, they're self-obsessed, they're ambitious and power hungry and desirous of furthering their own cause at the expense of everybody else, right? And
they're also you just made me remember, they're also hypocrites.
Yeah.
Because it was Curufin who looked upon Eol and said, those who steal the daughters of the Noldor and wed them without gift or leave do not gain kinship with their kin. And it's like, what are you doing with Lúthien right now? You know,
it's not bad when we do it.
Yeah, good rules for thee, but not for me. You know?
Right. Yeah, perfect. Perfect application for U.S. Senate.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So, what was cool about that is we have like this sort of enchanted animal, and it like
Juan,
yeah,
so
and
best boy.
Yeah, I know. It's always like an awesome dog too. Like, trying to think, it really gave me this part like reminding me of like like fairy tales and stuff where you have like an animal companion and nothing. I can't think of something off the top of my head, but it kind of reminded me of that where you have and it's interesting because it's like it says that because of Juan's like lineage being of the Valar and stuff that he had the ability to speak and he spoke like three times.
He was allowed to speak 3 times in his entire life.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love how he also
come up later, which
didn't he talk to Lúthien too? Like he said, like
he spoke to Lúthien once and Beren twice, I think, or maybe Lúthien twice and Beren once.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, I just want to say there's like 16 people in chat, and thank you guys so much. If there's new people, thank you so much. Be sure to hit the like button, and that's awesome. Thank you guys.
And subscribe.
Subscribe.
Yes.
Hopefully, like now that I'm done and I'm kind of changed some of my job stuff, I'll be making more videos. Hopefully about books and good stuff. So, thank you guys for the support. But anyway, so meanwhile, back with Sauron, Finrod dies.
Can I just read a chunk here?
Oh yeah, go for it.
A chunk about Juan, because Juan he needs all the attention. So
yes.
But Juan the Hound was true of heart, and the love of Lúthien had fallen upon him in the first hour of their meeting, and he grieved at her captivity. Therefore he came often to her chamber, and at night he lay before her door, for he felt that evil had come to Nargothrond. So, like right there, he's sitting at her door at night, protecting her from the evil within what was supposed to be this safe haven. He knows that the evil is there. He knows that it's gone. He's got to guard Lúthien from his masters already. He knows that, and he just does that, like without hesitation.
That was cool too. I liked it because it's kind of like. It's like animals know when you're a good person. Like they just know and like and they'll go right to you. And I don't know. I've rescued a lot of cats in my day. And like if they're in a bad situation and you're somebody that's kind, they usually really pick up on that. So yeah.
Well, just another chunk here though. After he gets Lúthien to escape with him. And he humbled his pride and suffered her to ride upon him in the fashion of a steed, even as the orcs did at times upon great wolves. So he is willing to allow himself to be denigrated.
Yeah, I love that part. Like he suffered himself to be ridden upon. Like that's awesome. It's kind of crazy too, just to think how big this dog is. If she could ride him kind of like a horse, like. I mean, he's a wolfhound. They're really big. I mean, I was talking to Will earlier. He used to have Great Danes, and they're bigger than me, so it must be a huge, huge, huge dog. But yeah, so they escape. So she escapes with Hearn, and meanwhile, back with Sauron, Finrod dies fighting a werewolf, and
he fights the werewolf because Sauron sends the werewolf to kill Beren, because he thinks he says Finrod is the more important captive to have.
Yeah.
And so instead of allowing Beren to be slain, Finrod jumps in and fights the werewolf, and dies in the process. But just once again, like the noble sacrifice. Yeah. Knowingly sacrificing. There's a great song by a metal band called Dark Moor. They're a Spanish band and they've been around for a while. But there's one song is The First Lance of Spain, and one of the lyrics is I'm blanking on it now that I've started, but it's unconcerned death, my dear wife, doesn't take out but gives more life. So that of course it's a little bit awkward English, but the meaning comes across that
it's a valiant
unconcernedly death. Sacrificing yourself does not lead to more death. In the right circumstances, it actually leads to greater life happening.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting? Yeah, and it's interesting too. It's because he's not getting the Silmaril because he wants the Silmaril. He just wants to be with Lúthien. So I think that probably like the motivation is different too. So I'm sure that kind of plays on it. And you know what? That's a good point. It goes back to our like, why is it like Frodo that has the ring? It's like he's this unassuming person that would never want to use it and stuff. And it reminds me of like when Sam gets the ring, he's like, what would I even do with this thing? Like, I mean, maybe I could grow like the craziest garden or whatever, but like, what would I even do with it?
It will be a garden of doom, and my hedgerows will be unsurpassed by all the
Could you imagine the poison ivy in that garden? Oh my!
All right.
Look upon my melons and despair.
That was Rosie Gamgee. Look upon my melons.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we're not gonna talk about people, people like getting it on the Shire. Like, okay, that's some third age stuff. Okay, anyway,
yeah,
yes.
Samwise breaking the fourth wall and winking.
Yeah, right.
Oh, maybe he sprinkled some of Galadriel's dust on her. Anyway, okay.
How does your garden grow?
I love this part because we get some of the famous Tolkien like poetry and songs in this, and I think Beren was singing actually about Tenuvial and how that was the rap battle there. So I had my pen on. Let me try to see if I can find it. It was like a short thing or something, or maybe it wasn't.
I know that it has Finrod's song or the poem of Finrod versus Sauron.
Yeah. Okay, I found the poem. It's not that one, but he's singing, and she recognizes his voice, and she sings to him, and I think he answers, and that like allows her to find him. And however, it's not so easy, and Sauron sends his werewolves out, and Juan kills them all like the absolute Chad dog that he is, and then he's like, what? You killed all my werewolves, you stupid dog. I'm going to turn myself into a werewolf and fight you. And this was like one of the coolest fights in the whole series. I thought just because it's so different. And yeah, he doesn't really win the contest. And Juan is killing him, and he keeps shape-shifting, and he turns into a snake, and he turns into all these other things, but he can't win. And I think that's really interesting. It kind of reminded me of Fingolfin fought like Melkor, and they said, Melkor was the only one of the Valar to experience fear. And I thought that was interesting. Kind of like, this is like Sauron gets this idea, like, you know what? I might not survive this, so like I'm out. And so he flees, and like Lúthien liberates the castle, and she finds Beren mourning Finrod, and yeah, that is really interesting, and it kind of takes Beren a while to figure out, oh my gosh, she's here, like what just happened. And that was really like an awesome scene because it showed how like loyal he was to Finrod, and they end up kind of liberating the area and building a giant cairn for him. And
the thing about Lúthien, because I have it right here, then Lúthien stood upon the bridge and declared her power, and the spell was loose that bound stone to stone, and the gates were thrown down, and the walls opened, and the pits laid bare. Galadriel does the same thing in Dol Guldur, probably like 6,000 years later, 6,000 to 7,000 years later, where she literally is this exact same spell pretty much. She just lays bare all the pits and tears down all the walls and everything, like really like grand epic stuff.
Yeah, that is really, really cool, that part. And it's interesting because wasn't that the same castle that Finrod had built?
Yes. Yeah. Tol Sirion. Yeah. It was.
I am just lost on the names, you guys. I'm so sorry. And,
no, you're good. But yeah, Finrod had built it, and then Sauron took it, I believe, after the fourth battle.
Yeah, his big push that was in last time we were like doing this. So, Yeah, and so after they bury him and kind of set the castle to rights, they they spend some time wandering together and trying to decide what they're going to do, and they decide, okay, we're going to get the Silmaril and we're going to do it together. And I really like that part, but it also made me really kind of mad because in this story, I really got a lot of the sense of like in Lord of the Rings movies where everyone's like, I choose immortal life and stuff like that. I really felt like they pulled that from here, and that just made me really angry. But yeah.
Well, it is in a way a very similar story between Aragorn. If you compare Aragorn and Arwen to Beren and Lúthien, but the thing about Aragorn and Arwen in the books is it's all kind of relegated to the appendix. It's not really a focal point of the main story in the books. So they had to expand upon that in the movies, which is where I think you're right. They pulled a lot from Beren and Lúthien in that regard, as far as choosing immortal life and that sort of thing. But.
Yeah. So that was really the part after they've done this together. Like, you know what, ride or die. That's it. And I like that part. And they have this problem because stupid Curfin and Caligorm are still out there. And you know what? You took my woman. You took my dog. Like, oh my goodness. And they go to hunt them down, and it's interesting because like Beren's like, I'm not going to kill you, but they definitely wound him, and Juan helps save them as kind of a final fu to Caligorm, and Beren and Lúthien take their horses and their gear and leave them, and they go back to Doriath for a while, and then they're staying there, and like, Beren's like, I got to get the Silmaril. I'm just gonna leave you and stuff like that. But again, Lúthien finds him with a song, and he's out. Gosh, I'm totally lost in the geography of this place, and they
Can I just once again interject?
Yeah, go for it.
The thing that really digs at Beren is because he's welcomed back into Doriath, right?
Oh yeah.
But the thing that really digs at him is that he was not able to fulfill his word.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like I haven't done it. Like
I've technically done it. My hand is holding the Silmaril, but it's.
Well, no, he didn't come back yet.
Not at this
like,
point.
No, we're not
there yet. I'm sorry, guys. Like,
this
is the end of where I was taking notes. I didn't get to do a full note taking for this.
But yeah, so he's irked by the fact that he hasn't been able to fulfill his oath, right? And that it's one of the measures of a man, in how he conducts himself, and a man is only as good as his word type of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So even though he's completely welcomed there, it's a digging personal irritation to him that he hasn't been able to do this task.
Yeah. So that's really interesting too. And I think at this point in time, I'm just going to try to go off my memory. So if I miss anything, guys, just let me know. But Lúthien and Juan go to Beren, but it's really difficult. So she uses her elf powers to disguise them as like a werewolf and Droglin or something, which was a vampire.
Yeah.
Now, I'm assuming by vampires, they mean like a bat or something that can fly. What was your take on like Tolkien vampires?
One of Sauron's best lieutenants is a vampire lady,
Thuringvethel.
Yeah, who does like she feasts on people.
Yeah.
So they're not vampires like Dracula, and they are more beastly, but yeah, they're vampires who feast upon on the flesh of their prey.
Yeah, and long story short, they end up finding. Yeah, So they find Beren, and then together they're like, you know what, we're going to do the disguise things again, and we're going to go to find Morgoth that way. And yeah, she kind of like, what does it says? Oh, here. I feel like this part should be read because it's kind of awesome. It's like, then Beren and Lúthien went through the gate and down the labyrinthine stairs, and together they wrought the greatest deed that has been dared by elves or men, where they came to the seat of Morgoth in his nethermost hall that was upheld by horror, lit by fire, and filled with weapons of death and torment. There Beren slunk in a wolf's form beneath his throne, but Lúthien was stripped of her disguise by the will of Morgoth, and he bent his gaze upon her. She was not daunted by his eyes, and she named her own name and offered her service to sing before him after the manner of a minstrel. Then Morgoth, looking upon her beauty, conceived in his thought an evil lust and design more dark than any that had yet come into his heart since he fled from Valinor. Thus he was beguiled by his own malice, for he watched her, leaving her free for a while, and taking secret pleasure in his thought. Then suddenly she eluded a sight, and out of the shadows began a song of such surpassing loveliness and by such blinding power that he listened perforce, and a blindness came upon him, and his eyes roamed to and fro, seeking her. And all his court were cast down into slumber, and all the fires faded and were quenched, but the Silmarils and the crown of Morgoth's head blazed forth suddenly with the radiance of white flame, and the burden of the crown and the jewels bowed down his head, and as though the world were set upon it, laden with the weight of care, of fear, and of desire, that even the will of Morgoth could not support. Then Lúthien, catching up her winged robe, sprang into the air, and her voice came dropping down like rain into pools, profound and dark. She cast her cloak before his eyes, and set upon him dreams, dark as the outer void where once she walked alone. Suddenly he fell, as a hill sliding an avalanche, and hurled like thunder from his throne, lay prone upon the floor of hell. The iron crown rolled echoing from his head. All things were still. And she basically like saves Beren because he fell asleep. So she basically cast a sleep spell on everyone.
Yep.
Like, we know the saving grace of all like early Pathfinder games. Like, thank you very much. Sleep spells. But and then
and I thought this was a really neat passage, especially in consideration of his willingness to immediately insert his own song into the Song of Iru. Mm-hmm. And yet here he just is so bedazzled by her that he just doesn't add anything and allows her to. I mean, this is it's really an interesting thing to kind of read and think about, which I haven't thought about it to any conclusion whatsoever. Mm-hmm. but it is kind of a neat thing to kind of start considering for a bit.
I know when I was Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, I was just gonna say this is why simping is a bad thing. Morgoth.
Yeah.
he's like, Lúthien, do you have an OnlyFans?
Do you have an OnlyFans?
Yeah.
Breaks out his wallet. Let me take out a loan of my mortgage to Angband here real quick. Like I got money I can throw at you.
Yeah, that's really funny because it's like, if you think about, because like there's been only 3 people that have really challenged Morgoth so far, and it's been like Fingolfin. Mm-hmm. And like that's interesting what happens there, because Morgoth doesn't want to fight him, but he comes out because of his sort of pride, because all of his lieutenants and stuff are like, oh my god, if you don't fight him, you're like a big pussy. And then this one, it's like Beren and Lúthien come in, and like Lúthien just like shows herself, and he's like, "Ooh, a woman, huh?" Like, and she just casts her wiles on him, and
don't get many of those down here. Let me tell you.
Yeah, like girl.
It's very interesting to note what Nathan was saying.
Yeah,
because the difference between these situations, right, is in the first time Morgoth was effectively in a material-less existence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that whole mortal flesh issue.
In this situation, he not only is he within flesh, but he has divested himself so much into the material world, and so he is more than all the other Valar. He is affected by material and physical things.
And it's also like he seems to be more prone to like mortal human weaknesses, if you would. So it's like pride, like wrath, lust, all those things.
He also kind of, I don't know if taking things for granted is the right way to describe this, but I mean, we're talking about an entity that witnessed the creation of the world, creation of the universe, and he's still bedazzled by this lovely elf maiden coming and singing him a song. Like, I mean, that's like...
Which tells you exactly what Tolkien thought of Edith singing.
Yes. Exactly.
Like, what did she sing him?
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is one of the things that I love about Tolkien is how he says things without saying them. So right here, when it says, looking upon her beauty, conceived in his thought an evil lust, a design more dark than had ever yet come into his heart. And that's, and he leaves it there. Whereas you get all these other authors out there, especially the grim dark folks, they want to delve into that, start writing about it, because maybe that gets page turns or whatever. But Tolkien just says, you know what? I'm not going to go there. It doesn't need to go there, because everyone reading this will know where to go.
A good writer is capable of instilling in the reader's mind the greatest possible thing that reader can imagine.
Yeah.
Which is why the greatest horror films are films where you don't
see
really
anything.
see the antagonist thing, because it allows the person to fill in their mind the most terrifying thing they can possibly think of. In this situation, it allows the reader to think of the most degenerate, evil concept they can come up with.
Yeah.
And that is more terrifying than actually just stating something, because once you've stated that that's the idea, then you have stated that that's the worst idea, and everybody else is going to be like, well, no, I can think of like 50 things that are worse.
Right. And you get a I can't think of the word. You get insight into the mind of J.R.R. Tolkien in terms of things that he found to be abhorrent. And the best way to describe it is like superficial, like lustfulness and desire is a reoccurring theme in his books that he paints as absolute evil. You see it with Morgoth, you see it with Sauron, you see it with Eol, you see it with Feanor, you see it with not that Feanor is absolute evil, but the actions that he took out of his lustfulness were evil.
Yeah, and there's a biblical passage in Jeremiah that says the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Implying that no matter how far you delve into the depths of that, then nobody can come to the conclusion of how deep that deceitfulness, that wickedness is.
Yeah. And you know what's cool about that? And I hate to interrupt you, but it just reminded me of what Tolkien was saying there by not naming it. Is it's like you would come up with something out of your own deceitful heart that might be like really awful and horrible, and it would be kind of like a little bit of a reflection on you that would maybe make you think twice.
Yep.
Right.
But man, yeah, so they get the Silmaril, and I love how they describe it, because it really kind of gives you like this sort of it's kind of got like Ark of the Covenant vibes because of how like dangerous and awe-inspiring and like Old Testament kind of angels kind of stuff this is. And
before we get to that, we need to point out that Beren did something really stupid, and he got greedy when he was cutting out the Silmaril, because he cut out the first one. Yay, great. You know, you got your thing. Let's get the hell out of here. But then he decided, I'm going to take a second one. And the knife snapped and cut Morgoth's
I was just going to read that part. And it's like, and here we go. As he closed it in his hand, the radiance swelled through his living flesh, and his hand became as a shimmering lamp, but the jewel suffered his touch and hurt him not. It came then into Beren's mind that he would go beyond his vow and bear out of Angband all 3 of the jewels of Feanor, but such was not the doom of the Silmarils. The knife Angkris snapped, and a shard of the blade flying smote the cheek of Morgoth. He groaned and stirred, and all the host of Angband moved in sleep. So yeah, there you go. It's like, you know, once you get greedy, it's like he could grab the first one because he was pure of heart, but you know, you try to take the second one, nope. He's going to wake up, your knife is broken, and that's it.
And something interesting about this, too, is so just kind of like correlation between, Aragorn is one of the descendants of Beren and Lúthien by a long stretch. But the knife Angrist was forged by the same dwarf that forged Narsil, which eventually became Anduril, Flame of the West. And it's very interesting how Angrist was snapped and abandoned and all the sort of stuff, trying to achieve, this. But Narsil was broken, cutting the evil ring from Sauron's hand, and then eventually was reforged. Parallel. It is kind of a neat. It's not quite the same, but there is a little bit of a parallel there. Yeah.
That's cool.
But yeah, so they snap the knife and end up fleeing in terror. And
and like that's what you get. It's kind of like you took from the tree. Now you have to like deal with it.
Yeah.
And Karkaroth, the greatest of the
wolves. Like it was a wolf, right? It's not a werewolf, right?
I thought it was a werewolf.
Was it?
Yeah.
I was looking at it like it's a werewolf.
That was fed at the foot of them.
He was fed from the hand of Morgoth directly, if I recall correctly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a werewolf, right? Because I found some art of like the Juan fighting Karkaroth. And I'm just like, this looks like some creepy furry stuff. I'm just gonna leave it there. But I think it might have been accurate if this dude was a werewolf.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, quick question here. Where on this map is Angband? Is it
Angband is way up north. Up north. Yeah. So if you see Gondolin on that map.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm so
it's pretty much directly north of Gondolin. There's a plain called Enfoglith. It's like a desolate plain, and on that plain in the north, like it's like literally where that map cuts off is where Angband's at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And that's another thing too. That even with the map, it tells a story, but it doesn't show you the evil. It lets you imagine all that too. This kind of. It's so good.
I know, right? I love it, and so we have Karkaroth,
the mightiest of the werewolves.
The mightiest of the werewolves comes out, and
the name is very similar to Kakarodon, which means was it like jagged tooth? Which
sawtooth,
what
something like that,
certain species of shark are in the genus Kakarodon.
And then, of course, there's caribous, like the three-headed hellhounds of Hades.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing, too.
You see a lot of linguistic and cultural and knowledge and mythological knowledge and stuff coming in this whole passage as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this story definitely had some, like, Orphis and Eurydice, like, vibes to it. But I can't talk about this for hours. But yeah, so they start the fight, and so he's fighting Beren, and Beren has a Silmaril in his hand, and Karkaroth bites off his hand. And of course, that's awful because not only does he take the Silmaril, but he had like poisonous like saliva stuff, and he's not doing well. And
well, Beren, good grief, he stuck his hand out with the Silmaril, like
right.
Come and fight me, bro.
Yeah, and then the wolf just bit. Like, okay, thanks for the snack.
So
like,
it wasn't bad enough that you broke your knife trying to get the second gem, but you had to go and be all cocky.
You're offering your arm as a piece of flesh to this giant beast. Like,
I know, like, fight me, bro. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's better sacrifice the hand than the life and the life of Lúthien.
Right.
So,
yeah, exactly. And
well, it's like you said earlier, the Silmarils are of no concern to Beren as something that he wants to keep. He's just obtaining it to get Lúthien.
Yeah, so I think the intent there kind of saves him, because if he hadn't been there for Lúthien, I think he probably would have just tried to get them back, and that was not a good idea. And again, the next part of it is awesome because the eagles come back. I love the eagles. Like Throndir. Like, ooh, I don't know if that was Throndir. I was thinking of it. Oh, Thorondor, excuse me.
Thorondor.
Yeah. And they came down and they rescued them just in the nick of time as everyone was waking up. And You know what? That really does remind me of Orpheus and Eurydice, because it's like, she dies and he has to go down to Hades, and he kind of uses his music to put them to sleep. And then he's like, you can't look at her. And right as he's about to leave, he turns back and sees her.
Right.
Yeah.
In that myth, as they're approaching the end of the entrance to Hades, as they're about to get into the upper world, he turns around. It's like if he had just, waited like 100 more yards.
Just, you have no children. I know. I really like that story. It's a very cool, like one of the earliest operas that actually was used to sort of convince people of the power of opera as a genre. But I will be talking about that with my Smart Muses like at the end of the month, because we look classical music greats. But this is a Tolkien stream, so we won't get off topic. And yeah, so the Eagles take Beren and Lúthien back, and
this is the bit where Beren approaches Thingol and is like, "I have for you a Silmaril within my hand," and then he holds out.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, so they eventually get back to.
That's the moment when Thingol accepts Beren.
Yeah, he feels bad for him. He's like,
Melian before was like, "Yeah, I know this guy's fine. Yeah. You're being a bit of a tool, Thingol."
Yeah. I always thought that's really funny, because I would like. In my head, I'm like, I'm sure there's a moment where, like, maybe like Lúthien's like, "Dad, like, you literally shacked up with Amaya, like, chill out." But yeah, so after that, I think that's like yeah, so I mean, it ends up pretty well for them. He allows them to get married, and even the minstrel that betrayed them goes on to have a good like career and stuff like that. And let me see. And so Beren and Lúthien end up leaving for the forest. They go back to Doriath, and they leave Doriath. And what else? Let's see what happens. I don't think there was a lot happening at the end. And then okay, so this is the end, and this is so sad, but you know what, it's like they live out a mortal life. Nobody really hears that much of them, and except that we know that they had I think it said they had a kid.
Dior.
Yeah, Dior. Okay, I can't remember what the name was, I'm sorry guys. And when does he die? Okay, I'm getting so confused here. Sorry, I'm trying to skim the text. So,
it turns out
he was.
That, Karkaroth is in his pain and agony. The Silmaril enters the girdle of Melian and is plaguing that land. So that's when Beren and Guan and Thingol decide they're going to go slay him, right?
Yeah.
And so that leads to the first.
Oh yeah, because they try to get the Silmaril
tragic thing, which.
Conveniently, the sons of Feanor were not around. They just said, "Well, no, we're not going to be messing. We'll let you guys deal with the werewolf.
We'll let you guys do it,
and we'll mop up afterwards."
Yeah. And then Juan dies like fighting that last werewolf, and Beren is
what prompted me to make my very first meme.
Oh my god! Don't do you have it? Like, you can share it if you want.
Let me see if I can hit the present.
Yeah, you should be able to do that. I mean, I do it, except that like I was getting the little like internet signal thing, and that's not good because I'm already like plugged in and everything.
Let's see. Are you seeing that?
No, it's not on screen.
Not yet. Just give it a second, because it'll say like add to screen usually.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let me see if I can bring it up. But it's a good meme. It's a sad meme, and here we go. Let me open it. Copy link. Okay, let me see if I can do it.
I think I've got it open.
Oh, okay. let's check. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Yes. Oh, goodness. Can I make it bigger? Okay, I'm just gonna read it because you can't see it. I can't believe you didn't die. You didn't cry during the Titanic. Do men even have feelings? Then he came, and falling beside Beren, spoke for the third time with words. And he bade Beren farewell before he died, and Beren spoke not, but laid his hand upon the head of the hound, and so they parted. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, you guys. I was crying when I read this. Like, this was awful. Like, I was just like, wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It was
Because that's Baron's dying there as well, right?
He's dying, and the dog is dying, and he's like, "You're a good."
Everything's just bad.
I was having such a bad day when I read those. Like, I was having severe homesickness. It's like, I really like it out here, but sometimes you just miss your family and stuff. And I'm like, his dog is dying, and he's dying, and he's like, "Was I a good boy, Beren?"
Yeah. Pretty
best.
much, yeah. You're the bestest boy.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. So then of course we do after that, like he dies and Beren dies, and then we do get the like Orpheus and Eurydice moment where Lúthien goes down to the halls of Mandos and please can I have him back? He's a good guy, and
for once Mandos feels pity.
Wow, he couldn't have done that earlier. That's great. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then that bit is fascinating too, because the solution to the whole thing is that Lúthien has to forsake the halls of Mandos and the nature of the elves.
Yeah.
And so he is the only elf that will not be reborn in that cycle and exist in Valinor, in the halls of Mandos and stuff. Her soul and her spirit goes on to be with Beren and the spirits of mankind that leave the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that causes Melian a lot of great grief. Yeah, I mean, like, you don't really realize the impact of like what the weight of the word grief means until you start seeing it used in the appropriate context.
Mm-hmm.
Like grief is not just being sad. Grief is an overabundance of sadness to which there can be no overcoming.
Yeah. And I mean, the last paragraph of the story just sums it up so well. This doom she chose, forsaking the blessed realm and putting aside all claim to kinship with those that dwell there, that thus whatever grief might lie in wait, the fates of Beren and Lúthien might be joined, and their paths led together beyond the confines of the world. So it was alone of the Eldalier that she died, indeed, and left the world long ago. Yet in her choice the two kindreds have been joined, and she is the forerunner of many in whom the Eldar see yet, though all the world has changed, the likeness of Lúthien the beloved, whom they had lost. Yeah. But that's kind of interesting if you think about her choice, because if you really had somebody you loved and you knew you could never be with them and they would die, and it says, like in the paragraph before, that that death was the gift of Ilúvatar to men. Is that maybe that was the best way that she could avoid the grief, was to die with him as well?
Yeah. And it's also, I don't want to jump ahead too much because we haven't gotten anywhere close to this part yet, but the thing that I think about is this quest, it didn't just give her mortality, it ended up Actually accelerating her demise later on. Which, no spoilers, but I'll just leave it at that. But she ends up, along with choosing mortality, ends up getting kind of swept into the doom of the Noldor as well.
But the other thing is they're allowed another life, though. That's the other thing.
Yeah, that's true.
They're allowed another life.
And that's when they go off in the woods and they live out their lives. They have a kid, and nobody really hears anything about them again.
Prince Dior.
Prince J.R.R. So I'm like, so how did they get the kid? Like, what was his story if nobody heard from them anymore?
Well, they without spoiling too much, they do come back in the narrative later on.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Um,
So we could
let's leave it at
probably
that.
jump to the 5th battle.
Oh, my most hated, depressing chapter. Oh,
yeah, the 5th battle. Okay, like, what do you guys? Okay, I barely remember this chapter. Why don't you guys take it and kind of give us a summary? Because
So, Maethros, the son of Feanor, is gathering a whole bunch of allies because he thinks if he can. I know this chapter like the back of my hand. I didn't even need to read this. I know this. So
he's your kid.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's my most hated chapter because it's like so depressing for me to read. But I've read it so many times because it's so good. So Maethros is gathering all these forces, the Noldor and men and a whole bunch of groups. And he wants to try and assail Angband. He figures if he can get enough strength and he can marshal enough power and essentially the same thing, and he can, with the might of arms, he can overwhelm Morgoth, capture or kill Morgoth, and take the Silmarils back. And he enlists the help of not just what would become who were Turin's father and uncle, Hurin and Hur, but he also enlists the help of the Easterlings, the sons of Bor and the sons of Ulfang.
Not the Easterlings.
And well, the thing about this, the sons of Bor were good; they were fine. But it ends up this whole battle just goes completely awry. It's just it starts off okay. And it has its peaks, but eventually descends into this terrible valley where just everything that can go wrong does go wrong.
But it's very clear that the success of the battle lies in the deceit and betrayal by many of the men against the elves.
Yeah, it says directly in there. It says the elves might have still won the day had it not been for the treachery of men, because the sons of Ulfang turned on the elves and started killing them. And the sons of Bor are posthumously known as the faithful to the Eldar because they kept their oath to Maethros and they killed the sons of Ulfang. But I mean, we're talking Morgoth unleash. It's pretty much both sides unleash like a megaton bomb of forces against one another. And it's just kind of
it's like the armies get annihilated. Like everyone dies.
The other thing to recount is that there are many amongst the elves who withhold some of their forces, right? Because what you have once again the two most fantastic sons of Feanor, Celegorm and Curufin, who refuse to go along with the thing because they want to go to war against Thingol essentially because he has a Silmaril.
Yep.
They're like, how dare he have a Silmaril? We can get that one easier than we can get those ones.
Yep. And Thingol won't go to war with them won't help Maethros because he hates the sons of Feanor for what they did at the kinslaying.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
so,
I mean,
and also what they did to Lúthien.
He has the Silmaril too, like so now. He's part of it. Like it is really interesting. I thought with this part, with everyone like betraying everyone else, it reminded me of like the first part when like Feanor came to Arda and or not Arda but Beleriand, the different continent when they left Feanor, and it's like they were trying to get people to work together, but like they heard of the evil that he had done and just immediately assumed the worst about him. So it's a sort of like the poisoning of the kinslaying. It's the poisoning of the Silmarils. It's the doom that's upon them.
Yeah. The Doom of Mandos. It says directly in the Doom of Mandos, but I believe it's treachery of kin against kin. You know, and that the other thing too that kicks this off, and you know, we kind of talked about this with Sauron earlier about how there's people out there who are like, well, Sauron's very complicated. They do the same thing with orcs, and the entire thing that kicked off this battle to begin with, the whole thing that started it, was the orcs dragged out this elf captive that they had, Yelmir, and they said, We have many such more at home. You guys better hurry if you want to come rescue him. And then they cut off his legs and his hands and left him there and then his head and left him there on the plains. Like, the orcs are not good. They're
like,
terrible
come on.
creatures.
I mean, isn't it like also talks about how like he was the orcs were like the corrupted form of the elves? So it's like, yeah.
They're unapologetically evil, and but that's the whole thing that kicks the battle off. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. They were I believe, if I recall correctly, they were supposed to lure out the forces of Angband and kind of crush them between hammer and anvil, is the way it's described. But that charge completely screws all that up, because eventually all the forces of the Noldor just descend in this kind of maelstrom.
Fingon was being patient and was waiting for Maedhroth's forces to come up to reinforce. And so the orcs torture Gelmir, and then that causes Gwyndor to ride out in rage and anger, because Gelmir and Gwyndor were brothers. And then that kind of forces everything to happen. But then you also have Glaurung comes into the battle again, but the dwarves are capable of fighting him because they're able to withstand the heat. And
they have the dwarf masks and all that.
Yeah, the dwarf king Azagol dies, but gives a mighty wound. But also in this battle, you have the Balrogs, you have Gothmog, who
my god, Gothmog, that freaking thing in the Balrog.
Gothmog who slays Maedhroth.
Fingon.
Yes, that's right. Fingon
kills Fingon.
Because then that makes Turgon
the next High King.
I just wanted to say hi to Jinja. If you guys don't know, Jinja is like an absolutely amazing artist. He has done some absolutely amazing Lord of the Rings art. And Jinja, if you have not done what we were just talking about, it's Beren and Lúthien. What Beren says goodbye to Huron. Huan, excuse me, Huan the dog.
Oh yeah, I know.
That would be a fan favorite.
I've talked with Jinja many times on Twitter. Yeah, Jinja's cool.
Jinja is like the bomb. We love you, Jinja. We love your art. Thank you. And his drawing, like the stuff he does on his channel with like time lapses, are pretty awesome.
So
anyway, carry on.
So zooming out into a sort of a textual analysis of the Silmarillion, the battles are always fascinating because they establish the next sort of age, although it's not age proper, it's the next phase of time. And in this battle, Morgoth is victorious. Yeah. So the next phase of the world's existence is one where he is in supremacy, and the world, the forces of good are waning. Yeah. And that's what leads into Túrambar being such a dark story.
Oh yeah, that story, man.
Everything leading up to everything from the fourth battle. The fourth battle, the forces of good were, well, I say good, but the forces of the elves were victorious predominantly, and so that led to a general time of peace and tranquility, which leads to a certain different type of story, the Beren and Lúthien story, which is more the quest story, as opposed to in this one, it's the proper tragedy. Beren and Lúthien is kind of a tragedy, but it's that tragedy with a happy ending, whereas Túrambar is it's a dark tragedy. The text of the Silmarillion is broken up into these different chunks where you have battle, consequences of the battle and the ages that follow, new battle that happens because things lead up to one, and blah, blah, blah. So the fifth battle, we didn't even talk about why it was called the Battle of the Countless Tears.
Battle of Unnumbered Tears. It's just the sheer slaughter that happens. I mean, there's a
mound of the dead.
The Hill of the Slain. Yeah. The thing is too is you also look at all the great names that died there. You obviously have Bor and his sons. You have Fingon, who rescued Mithros hundreds of years prior from being chained up by his wrist in Angband. You have what happened with Hurin Thalion, where he was captured by Morgoth. His Hurin's last stand is one of the most badass stands ever in the history of literature.
Yeah.
Where he's just killing the troll guard of Gothmog and killing orcs, and the only reason he even gets captured is because he ends up getting buried in the bodies of the trolls and orcs that he kills.
This is this is also
Hey,
after
I'm not there yet.
Fingon is slain because he's fighting Gothmog, who's the captain of the Balrogs, and he's fighting him, and it's like an even contest.
Yeah.
But a second Balrog lashes him from behind.
Yeah.
And that causes Fingon to fall, right?
Yeah. And it's a very brutal fall, too.
Yeah.
It is. It's so sad. And that just reminds me of Glorfindel in the beginning of Lord of the Rings. Like, yeah, I killed a bunch of Balrogs. You kids have fun.
The thing about the Battle of Unnumbered Tears is with the forces marshaled by the elves, there really shouldn't have been a chance for Morgoth's forces to win the day. And they did anyway because of the treachery that was there. Yeah. It really truly should have been just an absolute smackdown by the elves.
And you know what? It wasn't just Morgoth though. A lot of this was Sauron, right? Because Sauron had really gotten into the mental games, the capturing people, the spies, the deception and stuff, right? If I'm remembering this right.
Well, Sauron, I don't think is mentioned in Unnumbered Tears.
Oh, okay.
He was probably present, I would assume. Well, maybe. Varying degrees of impact that he would have had on the battle, but really the treachery was from Morgoth being this domineering force that he was, ensnaring the sons of Ulfang, saying, hey, look, I'm going to give you guys these lands. I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do that for you. Just betray the elves when the time is right, essentially. And that's what they did. And it ended up backfiring on them.
Yeah, and this all plays into what we see in Lord of the Rings too, when Sauron's bringing all the Easterlings into the battle, the Haradrim and all them, and this story kind of provides the counter to the racism decry of all that bullcrap that they come in. It's like, no, read this part here. Yeah. This is kind of where all of that has its genesis. It's not a racial thing. It is, these guys are fucking evil.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. It wasn't even all of them, because the sons of Bor stayed true, and they were Easterlings as well. True. They stayed. They kept to their word, and they killed the sons of Ulfang because of their treachery.
Which leads into the, within the events of the Third Age, you have within the lands of the Easterlings and even further east, you have pockets of resistance continually against Sauron in the Third Age, which is where some people suggest the Blue Mages went.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, the Blue Wizards.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they fulfilled their duties by going east to the Easterlings. I don't know if they went to Harad, but I know they went to the Easterlings because there were pockets of resistance in the Easterling camp that did not want to go and follow Sauron. So they were a boon to those groups. But yeah, so Unnumbered Tears happens. And yeah, really the last part is of that battle is Hurin was in the rear guard for Turgon, if I recall correctly. As he was escaping. Yeah. And the reason he was so close to him because he and his brother were permitted to leave the hidden city of Gondolin. They're pretty much the only people that were ever permitted to leave. But they had to swear an oath of secrecy. Yes,
that's where that came back from.
And one of the reasons why Hurin was captured was because Morgoth thought he could find the hidden city of Gondolin through Hurin, and Hurin pretty much gave him the middle finger. Good stuff.
I know it's really sad because I'm just looking at through this this is a family tree, and how many people are dead. It's these people are dead. That person is dead. It's pretty brutal. And the interesting thing about this part, because I was so lost with just remembering everything in this section, and but like you really get a sense of time scale here with like the elves. Like the elves have been fighting these people for thousands of years now, and that's just like the fatigue of it. And I kind of think back to like this chapter and the next chapter really got me thinking about the kind of things that Tolkien must have experienced during World War I to want to write this story. And it's must have, I mean, it's like it's such an unending, unyielding like hellscape that they were living in, that like it must have seemed in a lot of times that people weren't going to come back for this, and there were probably people that were just like fallen to despair and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I really felt like this is just, you know,
The one thing
one of those touching things. Sorry.
The one thing to note that I was thumbing through the battle because I knew I was forgetting something. When they're talking about the end of the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, it says night fell on Hithlum, and there came a great storm of wind out of the west. Out of the west, and I'm almost it's that's very peculiar. Like, it's okay. What's the symbolism there of the great storm wind out of the west? Well, I was almost thinking, the first time I ever read it, I was thinking to myself, I was like, okay, you just had this mass slaughter happen. So you have all these elves that they're in the halls of Mandos now. Like the Valar clearly know what the hell is going on. You know, and it almost seems like it's a precursor of things to come. It's almost like a warning, you know, for Balerion and more importantly Morgoth. But so let's see here, where are we?
So Fingon gets like defeated and he's out, and there's the wolves, the werewolves, the orcs,
Balrogs,
and you know, some of them except by sea, and some of them went to the Havens. Now, I was curious. Now, this is like the first time where they mentioned the Havens. Other one that said that what's his name's dad sent Gil-galad to the Havens. Now, the Havens are, it's not Valinor, but it's like the next stop before Valinor. Is that?
So pretty much the Havens are. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. So the Havens are, I believe they were, prior to everything going down with the Kinslaying, they were a kind of a stop for elves going back and forth, if I recall.
Okay.
And what they end up becoming is literally a haven, because it's like the last place where people can shelter away from Morgoth. But Círdan's there, Gil-galad's there, and a whole bunch of people who we haven't talked about yet end up going there.
Yeah, we'll get to those guys. And
so it's like a bus depot.
Yeah, pretty much. It's
it's the elf shelter.
It's the elf shelter. It's yeah.
Adopt an elf. Okay, and yeah. Oh yeah, and this is when Círdan the shipwright like get attacked, and this is talks about like a lot of the elves getting enslaved too. And there's a lot of captured them, and we now know where orcs come from, so that is going to be an awful thing. And then
a lot of times
goes to the. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say they're also used. They're not even necessarily used as orcs. They're just used as labor.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, that's okay. I'm just trying to remember. There's so much that happens in this chapter. It's very history dense, and there's a lot of names and stuff. And I was thinking, and then Turgon. What happened to Turgon? And then Hurin is brought before Morgoth, and Hurin defied him, and this is important for the next chapter, and I probably should read this last chapter, or last paragraph. And it says, "Therefore Hurin was brought before Morgoth, for Morgoth knew that he had the friendship of the king of Gondolin, but Hurin defied him and mocked him. Then Morgoth cursed Hurin and Morwen and their offspring, and set a doom upon them of darkness and sorrow. And taking Hurin from prison, he set him in a chair of stone upon a high place of Thangorodrim. there, he was bound by the power of Morgoth, and Morgoth, standing beside him, cursed him again, and he said, "Sit now there, and look out upon the lands, where evil and despair shall come upon those whom thou lovest. Thou hast dared to mock me, and to question the power of Melkor, master of the fates of Arda. Therefore with my eyes thou shalt see, and with my ears thou shalt hear, and never shalt thou move from this place until all that is willed, until its bitter end." And even so it came to pass, but it is not said that Hurin asked ever Morgoth either mercy or death for himself or for any of his kin. Yeah, that really sets us up for the next chapter.
Well, real quick here, because I have the Children of Hurin in front of me. The one thing that the Silmarillion doesn't do is it doesn't go into what Hurin actually says. It just says that he defied him.
Yeah. Just a second. AJ, I'm sorry. We were just talking about werewolves. You missed all the fun. But welcome. Thank you. Go on, Feanor. Sorry.
You're good. So I was going to say, I was just going to quote this here. But Hurin the Steadfast mocked him, saying, "Blind you are, Morgoth Boglier, and blind shall ever be, seeing only the dark. You know not what rules the hearts of men, and if you knew, you could not give it. But a fool is he who accepts what Morgoth offers. You will take first the price and then withhold the promise, and I should get only death if I told you what you ask." Because he's asking for the location of Gondolin.
Mm-hmm.
Then Morgoth laughed, and he said, "Death you may yet crave of me as a boon." Then he took her into the Hod and Nirnaeth, and it was then new built. This is the Hill of the Slain. And the reek of death was upon it. And Morgoth set Hurin upon its top and bade him look westward towards Hithlum and think of his wife and his son and other kin. Quote, "For they dwell now in my realm," said Morgoth, "and they are at my mercy." You have none, answered Hurin, "but you will not come at Turgon through them, for they do not know his secrets." Then wrath mastered Morgoth, and he said, "Yet I may come at you and all your accursed house, and you shall be broken on my will, though you were all made of steel." And he took up a long sword that lay there and broke it before the eyes of Hurin, and it splintered, wounded his face. But Hurin did not blench. Then Morgoth, stretching out his long arm towards Dorliman, cursed Hurin and Morwen and their offspring, saying, "Behold, the shadow of my thoughts shall lie upon them wherever they go, and my hate shall pursue them to the ends of the world." But Hurin said, "You speak in vain, for you cannot see them, nor govern them from afar, not while you keep this shape, and desire still to be the king visible on the earth." So, he's literally just talking back to him. Hurin doesn't care about any of Morgoth's threats.
Yeah. But that sets us up nicely for next chapter.
It does. I mean, that is an absolute response and complete cool wisdom.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just fantastic.
And then again, you have after all of this treachery, you have someone that's like, "No, I don't care. I'm not telling,"
Yeah.
Well, because the whole point is you can rely on Morgoth's inconsistency. You can rely on his dishonesty and his dishonorable conduct. So whatever you do for whatever purpose will never come to be, right? There is no mercy in Morgoth, as he said. So yes, Hurin could have betrayed Turgon and Gondolin for the sake of his family, but that wouldn't mean anything to Morgoth, as we saw with Sauron in Beren and Lúthien. He showed an illusion of the fellow's wife and said, "Hey, I'm gonna join you together," but then when the guy betrayed Beren's people, he said, "Okay," and then killed them. So it's the same thing with Morgoth. You just have to realize that it doesn't. So you may as well go down spitting in his eye.
Yeah. Well, oddly enough, it's what happened to the Easterlings after they served Morgoth's purpose. He fenced them in Dorlomin, wouldn't let them out, and it pretty much went back on his word.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, this does lead us neatly into the story of Túrambar.
Yeah. So do you guys want to start
Get your
this off?
Xanax ready, everybody.
Yeah, this is so awful. I like this story was so dark. I was seriously like, okay. I definitely felt there was like some kind of Oedipus Rex stuff in this one. And then there was just like I almost felt like with the part where he he accidentally kills Belig, that like this it felt like there was maybe something that Tolkien saw in World War One that happened, like there was a case of friendly fire or something like that. And I don't know. I just got these feelings from that.
It goes back. A lot of it goes back to, like Gadfly mentioned earlier, talking about Beren and Lúthien. A lot of it goes back to his mythological roots. I forget what the name. There's a poetic. There's a Viking poem, Norse poem, and it's very similar to the Children of Húrin. And there's a lot of aspects I believe Tolkien pulled from. I cannot remember it off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, I specifically didn't want to look up anything like this because I wanted to just go with fresh insights and not just like regurgitate everything that everyone says about this. Like, I don't know. It's like I'm an English major. When you just start reading about certain things, it's like everyone's like, well, this is this thing. No, I just want to say like, this is just my hot take on it. So go ahead, though.
No, that's just all I was going to say is, it came from his most certainly a lot of it came from his background in war, but I think it was that mixed with, his understanding and knowledge of mythology.
Well, I think it was more so his experience of war allowed him to more fully grasp and understand the sort of inherent truths that come up within myths and legends and the epic poems and all that sort of stuff. Because the notion of somebody accidentally killing an ally through some misunderstanding, some mistaken identity type of stuff, that's something that comes up over and over and over and over again. And it always leads to the same thing, where it's the individual is distraught at doing so, like completely shattered in their soul, like Turin is when he realizes that he's slain Belig. And the aspect of heroism in overcoming that type of stuff, and Gwyndor in this as well. Beleg in his passion and love for his friend is capable of reviving the spirit of resistance and courage within Gwyndor. And then Gwyndor takes up that mantle afterwards when Beleg is dead and takes care of Turin. And even though they're, later on, there's a bit of a rivalry between them for an elf maiden's attention that we will get to. Gwyndor does not begrudge Turin for the thing. He understands that he's got the frustration and stuff, but he still does not hold in his heart malice that you see with other characters that come up within Tolkien stories. Wormtongue being a fantastic example of that.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to say hi to Blippity Blop, and he had a great comment, and he said, I think the darkness is revealed in his introduction to Lord of the Rings. Quote, by 1918, all but one of my friends were dead. And that's insane to think about.
Yep.
And welcome, and nice to have you here. So I think we should probably just give a quick summary. So Túrambar, or Turin, I don't remember what his actual name was. His name was Turin, and he was one of the sons of Húrin. And basically what happened is, as the war is going...
son of Húrin.
Turin instead of Húrin. Okay. Oh, we're doing the son of... Okay. So...
Lord of Dor-Lómin.
Dor-Lómin, yep. And so he is... he's a son of Morwen, and she's afraid for her son, and so she sends him to Thingol and Melian, asking, can you please foster my son? And because of Húrin's bravery in the war and stuff. They do that, and they raise him, and he is like a son to Thingol, which is huge considering how much Thingol doesn't like people and is just generally antisocial. And he's
I think a lot of that. I think. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I think a lot of that also has to do with his experience with Beren as well. He probably looks a lot kinder upon the race of man now, and so he sees this young boy, and he's probably like, "Oh shit," like I gotta help him out.
Okay,
here we go again.
Like humans aren't so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but Turin's like kind of a troubled soul. Like when he grows up, he kind of goes out and he wanders in the woods and becomes kind of like a woodsman person, and like I just kind of remember everything.
But
and
Morwen has 2 other children.
Yeah, she does. Yes, and me in the one time she gives birth to a daughter. What was her other kid?
Well, the first one was Lalaith, who died of the sickness sent by Angband. And then, so the next one is Neonor, which is mourning. Mourning, Mourning, not Morning.
That's not an auspicious name, but hey,
right.
But that's an important facet as we shall explore as we go along.
God, this is so bad. Okay, so he's out in the wilderness, and like Thingol was like, "Well, can you find him? We need to take care of this guy. He's awfully troubled." And so Thingol's one of his strongest men, Bellig, a strongbow because he was an archer, goes out and says, "I'll find him." And they all love like Turin, and eventually he does. What happened? I think he does find Turin the first time, and
well, because within the halls of Thingol, there's the fella who is kind of snaky, who's Seros.
Oh yeah. He gets in a fight with Thingol, and I think not Thingol. Turin fights with that guy.
Seros ambushes him.
And he kills him, right?
Yeah. No, it was an accident. Seros is terrified because Turin's chasing him, and Seros tries to leap across a gorge, and he doesn't make it, and he falls to his death.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Turin flees because he thinks that he's going to be like severely reprimanded for that.
Yeah, so he thinks he's going to be
But the interesting thing about this is, so in Turin's youth, there was an elf maiden by the name of Nellis, and I love this character. She's in the proper book, The Children of Urim. And she's an elf maiden. She's the one who teaches Turin Elvish when he's a young boy. She shows him kind of like the wiles of the wilderness because she hates Menegroth. She's terrified of it. She appreciates like just the woods and just being out in the wilderness. And it was her who decided to toughen up and go to Menegroth and tell King Thingol, like, this whole thing with Turin and Seros, it wasn't Turin's fault. Here's what actually happened. Because she was always out in the woods, she witnessed everything that transpired.
Yeah.
Well, which is Mablung also was sort of witness to the fallout of that too. And he spoke on Turin's behalf too.
Yeah, so right from the get-go, like, this is not gonna end well.
Yeah.
But he's also like, so that's the thing that really like forces him to, or compels him to leave, because he doesn't want to come back because he thinks he's done something really awful, and they'll never believe him. And that's how Bellig goes out to find him. And Bellig is not successful in getting him to come back, and he's just going to stay out in the woods. And
something we need to note real quick is also the weapon he chooses to take with him, because that becomes very, very important.
I forgot that. I'm just like, I didn't get to take notes on this. It's like I read it, and I usually read it, go back, and like write out notes about like the plot, but I just didn't get time for that this week. But yeah, he takes
Anglatel, the black sword.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting because it's like a meteorite sword, and that's like a big thing in fantasy and stuff like that. So
it was forged by Ale.
Our friend Ale.
Yeah, he forged it, and its sister sword that I can't remember off the top of my head what its name was, but
This was also the first time we get the mentions of Lambus. Like, yep, he like that's something that Beleg sets out with, and
Melian
Anguirial.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And Melian warns Beleg about taking that sword because the malice of the smith is still in the sword, I believe is her exact words. But it's a very reliable blade. But we can talk about swords another time. Let's talk about the story. That
is a fun fantasy trope, though. The like swords with like kind of predestination or like a spirit or something like that.
But so Turin during this time is living as an outlaw and gets in with a group of outlaws.
Yeah, he falls into a bad crowd.
And Beleg meets up with him, and they part in friendship. Despite the fact that the bandits accosted Beleg, and then after Beleg and Turin part, Turin and his outlaws come across Mim the dwarf.
Mim the dwarf.
So Mim and his two sons, who are the last of these
like outcast dwarves.
Yeah,
the petty dwarves, the Nibbin Nogrim as they're called by the elves.
And then that's a whole other thing because Turin's men kill one of Mim's sons.
Yep.
And so Turin then has to promise Mim a ransom for the death of his son, and that allows Mim to let them stay there. But the petty dwarves have a loathing of the elves. Which comes up again because Beleg finds them again and brings the helm, the dragon helm, of his father.
Yep. Trying to get him to come back.
And then that lets it's Sauron or is it Melkor? I forget.
Oh, I don't remember.
That's Sauron.
But one of them
Morgoth.
It's Morgoth. Of course it is because it's Turin.
Oh, it is.
But
it's the curse.
But so that allows Turin to be discovered by Morgoth, and so Morgoth sends his deceptive foes, and Mim gets captured by the orcs, and once again agrees to take them to his home where they slaughter everybody.
Yep.
But Turin gets away, and Beleg is wounded in that encounter. Mim tries to kill Beleg, but Beleg frightens him off.
Yeah.
And then that leads to Beleg chasing after the orcs who have captured Turin at this point.
Yeah. Something to know, because the dragon home is a part of this as well. That's another item made by the same guy who created Narsil and Angerist and all the rest. Was the dragon helm. Just a quick side note, but now what do
you think about the petty dwarves? Were they bad? Was it just because they justified for hunting them down, or it's like they had been kind of separated from the rest of the dwarves?
Well, they were cast out.
They were cast out by the dwarves, and it's not so much that they were hunted down by the elves, so much as their population just dwindled, and the elves were taking over the land that they had claimed as theirs.
It was specifically Nargothrond, if I'm not mistaken. That was the halls of the petty dwarves prior to Finrod showing up.
They were banished in ancient days from the great dwarf cities of the east. And long before the return of Morgoth, they wandered westward into Beleriand, but they became diminished in stature and in smithcraft, and they took to lives of stealth, walking with bowed shoulders and furious steps. Elf colonizers.
Elf colonizers.
Yeah, it doesn't really say why they were like kicked out, but it seems to be like there were some kind of transgressions amongst the dwarves, and they were like exiled. So
I just imagine them being useless, and so the dwarves said, "You need to leave." Like,
Yeah, and because it says like how they're diminished in their smithcraft and stuff, so somehow they weren't like living up to the standards.
In the Dragonlance setting of Dungeons and Dragons, you have the 3 types of dwarves. Well, 4 actually, but 3 of the good types of dwarves. And you have the mountain dwarves and the hill dwarves, which are like regular dwarves. But then you have the gully dwarves, which are a race of intellectually diminished dwarves. And so I kind of think of them as somewhat like that.
Something that Blippity Blop said, yes, the Sindar did specifically hunt them, and the Sindar were also on friendly terms with the dwarves of Belagost and Nogrod, who would forge them weapons. Thingol had a whole treasure trove of weapons from them, so the petty dwarves were literally hunted down by elves armed by other dwarves.
CIA or something.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awful. Oh my goodness. Okay, so back to the story.
Yep.
Okay, so
Beleg is chasing down the orcs.
Yeah, so Beleg is chasing down the orcs that have captured Turin, and this is so sad.
This is where he comes across Gwyndor, who has escaped from the mines.
Oh yeah, the other elf dude.
Thraldom. And then they together go and sneak up through the camp of the orcs, rescue Turin, take him away some ways, and then Belgar cleaves the chains, but in so doing pricks Turin's foot, which causes Turin to wake up and
freak out.
Beleg and accidentally kills him, and is so overcome by the
becomes catatonic.
Yeah.
Oh God, that was so sad. It's like what I could just see that happening because they talk about how he was like he was tied up to a post and the orcs had been throwing daggers at him. So this is a guy that's been starved. He's been like tortured, and then the guy comes to save him, and he's just having like PTSD moment and kills him. And
he didn't realize it was Beleg until I believe it was a lightning strike that kind of illuminated really the area. Too. Yeah, and so that it was just like a flash that he saw of just his dead friend's face.
Yeah,
and they
buried Beleg still and silent, staring on that dreadful death, knowing what he had done, and so terrible was his face, lit by the lightning that flickered all about them, that Gwyndor cowered down upon the ground and dared not raise his eyes.
That is just.
Thus ended Beleg's strongbow, truest of friends, greatest in skill of all that harbored in the woods of Beleriand in the elder days, at the hand of him whom he most loved. And that grief was graven on the face of Turin and never faded.
He's just
never faded.
Yeah. See, this is one part where I take issue with Tolkien, oddly enough, because I feel like it should have been Beleg and not Glorfindel who was brought back. I feel like in terms of loyalty to friends and things of that nature, I feel like narratively it would have worked better as Beleg, but that's just my own little nitpick.
Spoilers!
we can have a discussion.
That's third age.
We can have a discussion about that when we get to Glorfindel. Because
although I know, I'm waiting for him to kill like 10 Balrogs.
I don't agree.
Yeah, that was so sad. And so like it's interesting because the broken elf guy, and is this the fun thing because he gets healed with the healing power of Lembas, which is important obviously in Lord of the Rings, and like he kind of starts taking care of Turin, and he finally gets him to kind of like get out of his funk. But it's kind of sad because they go through a lot of places that they've been before. You can see how evil is really just taking over the world again. And he ends up taking where does he go? And he didn't know him, and he sort of just goes back to where does he go?
Well, he goes to Nargothrond with Gwyndor.
Gwyndor.
But he takes a different name there.
Yeah. And they call him the Moor McGill, the black
Mormogil.
sword because he
Mhm.
picked up that cursed sword.
Yeah, he earns that name, but he calls himself Argawain, son of Umarth, which is the bloodstained son of ill fate.
Goodness. This is where I'm like, okay, I am getting really confused, and I'm trying my best. Yes, fibromyalgia and the Silmarillion don't mix. And it's been really cold, so I'm like, my memory is just really kind of like blinking sometimes. So I'm sorry that I'm not as well versed in this chapter. So
It
that's
takes
good.
more than one reading to get all this.
Yeah.
absolutely, but yeah, it just feels so hard.
And
coming
more
to
than
my
one reading in 20 years.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
so this is where Turin starts becoming a great warrior amongst the elves of Nargothrond, and Finduilas, an elf maid there, starts taking a fancy to him, whom Gwyndor had loved previously, but because he had spent so long being a thrall of Morgoth, he's lost all his vitality essentially and his stature.
Yeah.
So she no longer particularly esteems him.
Mm-hmm.
And this ends up being an important thing because although Turin does not reciprocate Finduilas's love and affection, Gwyndor reveals the truth of his name to her, and that gets his name, Turin, son of Hurin, flowing again out into the world.
Yep.
And Gwyndor also reveals to her that there is the doom of Hurin is upon him from Morgoth.
So good luck trying to get a girlfriend unless you want to get caught up in that.
And then because Turin has become such a warrior and valiant, the Nargothrond elves have changed their way of doing war, and they build out a big bridge, which then ends up allowing them, once they get defeated by Morgoth's forces, allows those forces to come into the city, and all but Turin are defeated, and Gwyndor is slain mortally, and he tells Turin that the salvation of his fate is in Finduilas. And so Turin goes back to the city to try and rescue her, has a confrontation with Glaurung, the dragon, who speaks lies to him about his mother and sister being enthralled, which then makes Turin, instead of chasing after the orcs who have taken all of the elf hostages, including Finduilas, he goes back to the halls of his father, where he learns that his mother and his sister have left to the halls of Thingol. And then that makes him change his tack, and so instead of going to the halls of Thingol to spend time with his mother and sister, he remembers Gwyndor's words, and goes and pursues the people the orcs who have captured the elves, and discovers that they have all been slaughtered by the orcs, and Finduilas was mounted on a wall with a spear, essentially. Egelmar style, for those of you who Wheel of Time.
So
Wheel of Time? Wheel of Time?
When Turin goes to Dorlomin to the halls of his father, he encounters the Easterling Broda. This has got to be
his wife.
Yeah, and this has got to be my favorite, like, as from just a single character perspective, probably my favorite exchange of dialogue in the entire Legendarium, because it's elaborated on in the Children of Urin. Essentially, so Broda is drunk and being just all manner of abusive to Lady Erin. And he starts saying all kinds of nasty stuff to Turin, and then Turin says, then Turin leapt at him and drew his black sword and seized Broda by the hair and laid back his head. Let no one stir, said he, or this head will leave its shoulders. Lady Erin, I would beg your pardon once more if I thought that this churl had ever done you anything but wrong. But speak now and do not deny me. Am I not Turin, Lord of Dorloman? Shall I command you? Command me, she said. Who plundered the house of Morwen? Broda, she answered. When did she flee and whither? 1 year and 3 months gone, said Erin. Master Broda and others of the incomers of the east hereabout oppressed her sorely. Long ago she was bidden to the hidden kingdom, and she went forth at last. For the lands between were then free of evil for a while because of the prowess of the black sword of the south country, it is said. But that is now ended. She looked to find her son there awaiting her, but if you are he, then I fear all has gone awry. Then Turin laughed bitterly. Awry? He cried. Yes, ever awry, as crooked as Morgoth. And suddenly a black wrath shook him, for his eyes were opened, and the spell of Glaurung loosed its last thread, and he knew the lies with which he had been cheated. Have I been cozened that I might come and die here dishonored, who might at least have ended valiantly before the doors of Nargothrond? And out of the night, out of the hall, it seemed to him he heard the cries of Finduilas. Not first will I die here, he cried, and he seized Broda, and with strength of his great anguish and wrath, he lifted him on high and shook him as if he were a dog. Morwen of the thrall folk, did you say? You son of dastards, thief, slave of slaves. Thereupon he flung Broda head foremost across his own table, full in the face of the Easterling that rose to assail Turin. In that fall, Broda's neck was broken. Like, Turin just goes absolutely ape shit.
Yeah, I know. There's some great moments, and I think one of the saddest things about this story is that every time he tries to go back and make things right or do the right thing, but he's utterly like stuck by his fate. And there was a quote here, and Gwyndor tells him, this is like after the Finduilas episode, that he said, "The doom lies in yourself, not in your name." That's just like the whole your doom.
A lot of it's Turin's own choices. It really has nothing to do with.
That's the difference between the doom and the fate within Lord of the Rings, right? Because Tolkien's concept of fate is everything that has happened that has led up to this moment in time is a person's fate. It's entirely unchangeable and irreconcilable. But a person's doom is the inevitability of their lives' existence based off of their character and their nature. So the doom of Feanor is the doom of Feanor's character, you know, and his nature and the nature of his children and the people following after him. And the people who would be willing to follow after him and seek those same things that he would. The doom of Hurin and Turin is the inevitability of these characters' actions in their pursuit of honor and dignity in a world that is not suited for that type of mentality, right? Because Morgoth had won that last battle, the world has changed. Point. And so being the noble warrior in a time where evil is rampant,
you're absolutely right. That is
going to lead you through a merry hell, because you're trying to do the right thing, but evil is not a straightforward fighter.
No, it is not. It's kind of like the Ned Stark dilemma in like a Game of Thrones novel. It's like, you know, he's trying to, like, he is operating from a different moral standpoint than everyone else he encounters.
Yeah. So the doom of all these characters is it's not an inevitability in the way of like a predetermined fate. but it's an inevitability because of the nature and the character of the people around them, right?
Yeah, it's like they're like, it's not something that's foretold. It's just the inevitable occurrence of like their character being in this situation. I totally get what you mean.
If you think of like Fingon, his doom could have been completely different if the character and nature of the rest of the, like all of Feanor's sons, was more like Maedhros.
Yeah.
Right? But you have, once again, those two assholes, Curufin and Celegorm, who are, I would say, more in nature with the obsessiveness of Feanor. They don't quite have the noble aspects of Feanor's spirit, but they have that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That one, and so their nature and their positions allowed for the doom of Thingol and all of those other all of the other people in the Battle of the Uncounted Tears.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So now the really awful part of this story. Oh goodness.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we haven't even gotten to the really awful part of this story
So,
yet.
so Turin goes out and he's like, okay, I just can't win. And then I think, who does he end up with? Does he end up with the outlaws again?
The Men of Brethel.
They're not quite outlaws, but they're like
sort of like
humans trying to exist in a somewhat noble way, under as much control as under as much freedom as they can manage.
They're living out in Ancapistan, like it's like to say.
Yeah.
So and where does that start? And so he ends up living with them, and he kind of is trying to get over the extreme amount of like PTSD and stuff that he has, and
the other important thing to note is that when it's determined that he has gone missing, or when it's determined that he is the Black Blade, his mother is insistent on going out to meet him.
Oh yeah, yes, that's the other part of it.
And his sister
Nienna goes
as well, and they come across Glaurung, who doesn't slaughter all of them, but
like drives away a large part of the horses. Some people die because of the horses going crazy because of the dragon. And like the dragon ends up enchanting. I think the mom gets away, and then the dragons enchant his sister Nienna
to make her forget everything.
She doesn't remember anything, and I think
once again Mablung is another one of these unsung fellas. He tries to take her underhand and
try to rescue her, but she's like freaked out, and she sees him, and she's like lost in the woods, and he can't find her.
She gets pursued by orcs, and he goes after the orcs along with some other elves and slaughters them, but she gets away from them. And she runs into Turin, who doesn't know she's his sister. And at this point, she's mad, right?
She's mad.
So he takes her into the abode of Brethel.
Yeah, Brethel was the guy that had healed him, right?
Yeah. No, Brethel. Well, the Men of Brethel Brethel was just the area, I thought.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Brandir is the
Brandir.
No,
yeah.
Brandir. Gosh, the names all sound alike.
Not Brandir. Shoot, what's his name? Begins with a B.
Take care of Barmy.
The
guy. That's okay. So the guy that rescued him ends up healing her too. And to make a long story short, she's there for a few years, and she's a nice, cute young girl, and he's a nice, handsome young man, kind of famous. And he asks for her hand at one point, and she initially says no, and then he asks again, and I guess they do get married. And
Brandir is an important fellow because he is wise,
Yes.
He also is in love with her.
Oh yeah, he's also
with
in love with
Meniel.
her.
But he
The third wheel.
also understands and perceives the darkness that is consuming
Turin.
Turin and what that means for his people. Because once again, Turin is preventing. He's taking the people of Brethil out to combat evil more directly.
Mm-hmm.
And Brandir is opposed to that. So he once again understands that people following Turin's path at this point in time, he's leading people to a particular type of doom.
Yeah. Not good.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and then doesn't he kind of say like, okay, I told you I wasn't going to go look for this dragon and stuff now, but we're married and all that stuff. And it actually says she got pregnant too.
Yeah, she
Yep.
conceived.
Yep, she's knocked up, and he's like, I'm not gonna do it, but you know, the dragon's there, I have to take care of it. Like, it did things to my family. And so he goes with, who does he go with? He goes with another guy. And
there are two people that follow him. One one is a jerk who starts insulting
Dorless.
because of his lameness.
Mm-hmm.
But then the other guy's pretty cool, except he doesn't get an opportunity to. He dies by a falling rock, so he doesn't get an opportunity.
Dies, like, I think it says like ingloriously or something like that.
Yeah.
And like, but Turin, like, he sees that area, he jumps over it, which is kind of reminds me of the initial like fight that he got with the elf guy Saros or something, where he fell in the water. Like, he jumps over it and pursues the dragon. And and he is actually able to attack it, and he sneak up on the dragon, attack it, and he like
as he's fighting the dragon though, Niniel once again cannot sit still. And has to go and follow. And so Brandir goes with her along with other people, but because he's lame, he can't keep up.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So Turin ends up slaying Glaurung. And that makes Niniel remember everything.
Yeah, because she's broken from the spell, and she's like,
right.
Yeah, and then she actually finds Turin, and like the poison of the dragon's blood like caused him to be kind of incapacitated, and she thinks that he's dead, and she realizes he's dead. He's my brother. I'm having his kid. This is awful, and she just yeets herself over the cliff.
Yep.
But and this is the thing that I mean, Glaurung is such an ass.
Yeah.
He just says, "Hail, Ninyor, daughter of Hurin, we meet again ere the end. I give thee joy that thou hast found thy brother at last, and now thou shalt know him, a stabber in the dark, treacherous to foes, faithless to friends, and a curse to his kin, Turin, son of Hurin. But the worst of all his deeds thou shalt feel in thyself."
Yeah, like like that kid in your belly. That's your God. That dragon's such an asshole. Well, it's like, bro, you eat people. Like, chill out.
Well, and here's the thing too, right? You know, Morgoth's curse on Hurin and his whole household. Glaurung had to have been an unforeseen and unintended consequence, because I mean, losing Glaurung is that's a pretty big, significant blow to your forces, you know, and you know, it's it's just something to know. But yeah, you're right. Glaurung Glaurung is an absolute tool. Like
the one thing I want to point out once again, we see a lot of Tolkien's knowledge of particularly the Germanic stories. You have Sigismund, who slays the dragon by stabbing its belly. But you also have Beowulf,
Mm-hmm.
who I'm sorry, Nathan, if you haven't finished Beowulf.
I have not,
yet.
but it's fine. I'm all right.
But
I've seen the movie.
Beowulf, the poem of Beowulf ends because there's a dragon in the land, and none of the men are noble enough in character to go slay the dragon, except for Beowulf, who is an old man at this point. So there's one guy who goes with him, but he doesn't take part in the fighting. And so Beowulf slays the dragon, but dies in the process. And it's a very similar construction of this narrative of Glaurung and because Glaurung has amassed that hoard of wealth in Norgothrond, right?
Yeah.
And the fellow who witnesses Beowulf's death refuses to give up the secret of where the treasure is because of the dragon spell on the gold. And lo and behold, in the histories afterward, Beowulf's people are eradicated because there are no more heroes. So if you think about this story, there are no more heroic men in this time period, and particularly because it's not a time period for that type of heroism.
That's interesting thing.
Well, it's always that time period for heroism, but when there are too few men who are heroic, that is the particular issue. If
kind of
every
like
other
when you-
man was as heroic as Turin, his doom would have been very different.
Yeah, it's interesting because you kind of think about, like, you know, it's a different age, and you think about like the Wheel of Time and how there's different turnings and how there's like the idea of like Ta'veren and people that can change the pattern. And it's like, do these people, like, all of the people need to be there in some way to affect the kind of change that they need to. So that's kind of an interesting, like, ancillary to that idea. But yeah, man, Túrambar, like that's interesting. So were there other, like, this story of all the stories felt like there was a lot of like myth and stuff. Were there anything else like that you saw as kind of a classicist, Gadfly, in this part?
Well, the end as well, where Turin slays Brindar, but then then the spell of Glaurung finally leaves Turin completely, and he ultimately realizes that Brandir was telling the truth about the situation and how and what happened with Niniel being his sister and all that sort of stuff, and ends up killing himself, right? And the falling on the sword after a great dishonor is a very classical.
Yeah, that's a very Roman thing to do.
As you think of Mark Antony falls on his sword when he realizes that Octavius wins the Civil War, right?
Yeah,
that happens so many times in Roman history.
And I highly doubt he pulled it from this particular culture, but I mean the Japanese
I was going to say that
of seppuku, falling on your, that's ingrained.
The other thing to note is that the whole thing, even Turin's decision to try to rectify his honor, is framed in a tragic way. So for Tolkien, this idea of trying to rectify your dishonor by killing yourself is not a thing to be commemorated.
That's not how you fix it.
It's a tragedy, and it's a shame that Turin did this.
Kind of reminds me, if I remember this correctly, of the Oedipus story, where it's like Oedipus knows the prophecy, and he tries to do everything he can to not fulfill it, and he just ends up inadvertently doing everything.
The Oedipus story is hilarious because his dad learns of a prophecy that his son is going to kill him. And so his dad tries to expose the baby, which means just let
him die. Right.
And then a shepherd, because it's always a shepherd, because a shepherd is a very humble origin, but a noble origin. The shepherd raises him. And then Oedipus learns of the prophecy that he is going to slay his father. And so he flees his adoptive father. Mm-hmm. And on the way to Corinth, he meets his real father, and his real dad's a complete asshole, so he kills his dad. and then goes to Corinth, where he becomes king and marries his mother. And then his mother learns, and she hangs herself, and Oedipus learns and blinds himself.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's like, duh, that's so mad. So, I know we've been going kind of long today, but what were you going to say, Feanor?
Well, one thing I just want to note is the suicide of Turin has created a significant debate within the Tolkien fandom about whether or not the sword that he wielded was sentient or not, or whether Turin was just insane.
Because it does talk right at the end.
It talks to him, yes.
Yeah, and from the blade rang a cold voice in answer, "Yea, I will drink thy blood gladly, that so I may forget the blood of Belig my master, and the blood of Brandir slain unjustly. I will slay thee swiftly."
Yeah. Now, some people say that was Turin talking to himself, and it was just his psychosis was manifesting it in the sword. Other people say that it was actually the sword talking to him. I lean the latter, and I'll tell you why. Because within kind of like the grander Tolkien legendarium, whenever the sword is brought up, it says specifically that the sword would be in mourning if it would if it killed someone unjustly, and it would be joyful when being drawn in battle. So I'm leaning towards the sword actually had kind of like its own thing going on. It wasn't that Turin was just a nutcase at this point.
Yeah, like maybe there was some kind of like a spirit.
Yeah,
like there was energy, like I don't know, like I'm a witch, right? So I'm like, okay, sometimes there's like certain energies like embedded in the creation of certain things. So like this was made by a very evil, spiteful person, so that's always going to be in the sword. So it's going to like kind of corrupt maybe like the rings
sword
and
in
stuff.
Particular, you have to remember that it was another sword that was reforged, right? Mm-hmm. It was reforged when he was living among the elves of North. Blah, blah, blah. I started mumbling over my words there, but it was reforged, right? I'm not of the opinion that it was sentient in the terms of what we would consider sentience.
Yeah, like we're not dealing with Sando swords here.
Yeah,
that literally have.
But it's it's sort of the concept that the sword in its sort of perfected form after it has been reforged is an embodiment of a particular type of ideal, and so it's not talking per se, but it's vibes.
Vibes. It's got an energy.
That would be my counterpoint to Feanor's position.
That's interesting. I didn't really pick that up because I was the lost, but that's an excellent debate. So do you guys have any closing points for this section?
I'm just looking forward to the next one.
I'm excited. So answer me this, guys. Don't spoil it for me. Does anything else happen with Hurin, or is he just stuck up on his like throne forever?
He does eventually get released after all his children are dead. Released, keep in mind, he doesn't escape. And what ends up happening is, I don't know, should I delve into this? Because it is a little bit spoilery. But
I would
no, don't tell me. We'll find out.
Read and find out, lady.
My closing sentiments would be: hug your loved ones after reading this chunk.
I know this was like the
But don't
worst
hug your loved
week
ones.
for me to
Yeah,
like.
yeah, no doubt.
Just hug.
When we say, brotherly
cat.
love, we mean it platonically.
Yeah. Like enough, like ASOIF, like for that, like it just I mean, I like A Song of Ice and Fire and all that, but I've had enough of that. Like,
Right.
but yeah. So this has been really good. It was a rough read, and I'm not gonna lie, I had a really bad night. Just a day of like homesickness, and I was reading the Fifth Battle in Túrambar, and I'm just like, I struggled. Like I had to put it down and go outside, take a walk. I have to do something else to get through it. But man, that was like, wow. But you know what? It's like, I'm a firm believer that like you can't really appreciate like love and joy without having these kind of like moments. So you have to know the worst of everything to have the hope and the joy and catharsis that you get in like Lord of the Rings and stuff that happens later. So I appreciate it for that too. And obviously the story of Beren and Lúthien was absolutely beautiful. And yeah. So do you guys have anything else like you guys are gonna do this week or coming up?
Well, I put it in chat, but if you get a chance listen to the song Tom Lehrer wrote called Oedipus Rex, go listen to it. The guy plays piano, and he's from the 50s and 60s. It is freaking hilarious. It's great stuff. And so it's kind of a nice little bit of levity in light of what we just read.
That's awesome.
One thing to note as well, there is a audiobook version of The Children of Urin that is narrated by Sir Christopher Lee. Yes. You can find it on Audible. It's actually on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube as well. So you don't have to pay for it. But yeah, it's Christopher Lee did the entire book. So if you want a more expanded version of that story with one of the greatest voices in cinema history, it's there at your disposal.
Awesome.
But yeah, I just wanted to add that little tidbit on because I just remembered
absolutely.
That's cool. Okay, I'm just
he does a lot of audiobooks.
He has such a great voice.
And
so does
Christmas
anyone have
albums?
A Christmas, yeah. Does anyone have anything they want to plug for upcoming like events or streams or anything or videos?
Not currently, no. I do have a project in the works that's going to really kick off next year. It's a biggin project.
I think I hope you've got your like fall footage for that because I know like where you're from and it's beautiful.
I next summer I'm going to be heading out to as of yet undisclosed locations to do some filming of a sort, shall we say. And it is most definitely Tolkien related. And I'm kind of slowly gathering all the pieces around me that I'm going to need, but it's going to be fun, but stay tuned for that. That's still a ways off. But right now, just, I'm going to try and get better about just periodically making just different news videos or covering some aspects of lore, things like that. And trying to get my channel back up and running again after it's been on hiatus for a little over a month. So
I feel the same exact way, and I'll be doing that too. It's like I kind of like leaving the DoorDash life behind, looking to do some other things and kind of step into like a new life, so to say. And I'm looking forward to that a lot. And I'll probably hopefully be writing again. And I'm gonna finish my Wheel of Time reviews. As much as I don't want to go back there, like I need to do it. And I was thinking about like maybe doing some other videos. And I'll be on with like Zach's, of course, on Wednesday. And at the end of the month, I think it's last week, and I think it's the 29th. I'm going to be on with Miss Martin Muses, and we're going to nerd out about like classical music. So I know I've mentioned it a few times, but I'm really into that, and I'm really looking forward to talking about that because not so many people are into that. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Anything else you guys want to plug?
I'm going to be doing a fight scene autopsy of all the Wheel of Prime fight scenes with Prophet. I don't know if that's going to be live streams or just videos.
Oh Lord!
Keep an eye on his channel. I've got all of them, but episode 8 cut out. It's kind of funny. Two episodes this season had no fights. Interesting, but like the fights
it's all
come
a
out.
struggle section, dude. It's
First 7 episodes, the fight scene percentage for high epic fantasy in TV show is less than 5% of the time. It's pathetic, and they're bad. But we're gonna have some fun breaking it down and laughing our asses off at it. So just keep an eye out for that, and that's about it for me. So.
Well, thank you guys so much, and thank you all in chat for watching. If you enjoyed this, we'll be back. We're kind of up in the air because of holidays. I will let you know on my YouTube channel and stuff. Like it's either going to be we'll do one next weekend or we'll do one the first weekend in December. Like we have 2 more, and just to let you know, the next one is going to be chapters 22 to 24, and then the final one will be the Akalabeth End of the Rings of Power. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate that. We have awesome chat, and let me get back to my little outro and like remembered how to like sign this off, and hopefully the video thing won't like screw up like it did before. So all right guys, thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Goodbye.